You asked me about synchronicities. We've already had probably 10 right here on this call. So it's all around us, and it's just representing this. As we get more and more balanced, the antenna of our brain becomes better able to receive. We have a higher self that is a conceiver. We have a brain that is a receiver. And, we have a consciousness that is a perceiver. And I think what's going on is that, mankind goes through this cycle. Mankind is represented by Orion. Literally this cycle of Orion going through the stages of separation and conquering and beating everyone and winning. And this is sort of what was personified by the human race, I think, for the last several thousand years. And now Orion finally is growing up, and he's finally getting to the point where he doesn't want to conquer anymore.
Making live discoveries.
Yeah, we are. That's exactly what's happening right now. So why did I take everybody to the backside of the pyramids? Because we had crossed it over. We crossed into a new existence. So I wanted, the first night we had a party, we were in front of the pyramids before we went to the Great Pyramid, before we did all the things that we did together. And I wanted to be symbolic of we've crossed over to a new world.
Robert Edward Grant, welcome back on Just Happened, brother. You are the king of synchronicities. So I would love to open up the space with learning about what have been the most significant synchronicities that you've had in the last few weeks.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, there have been so many, it's even difficult to, I would say, I probably experience synchronicities that feel significant in some way, shape, or form at least every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes. I mean, you and I just experienced one, which was pretty funny. That, while we were setting intentions for this, and then you mentioned at the very end of your intention, the 144,000, and then I looked at the clock right after we were finished, like literally 10 seconds later, and it was 11:44. And so it's 144 right there. And I was like, oh, look. And, so I experience these kind of synchronicities all the time. From you name it. Probably the biggest one I had recently was I went to Brazil about a week and a half ago. And the first city that I was asked to go to was this city called Florianopolis, which is on the coast. It's a beautiful town. And I didn't even know why my team there was asking me to go there. I had no idea. I have two people on my team. Actually, a third person works on my math research team that lives in Florianopolis. So they call it Floripa for short. And, of course, I'm very involved in Orion, and my entire next season of Codex is about Orion and about Metatron revealed, and it's connected. So Metatron, here's a spoiler alert, right? Metatron is the higher self of Orion. Orion is the dimensionally limited avatar. So let's kind of like just drop that for a moment. We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that. And so I didn't even know why I was going to go to Florianopolis. But Luis Fernando, who is one of the team members that helped set up the whole thing down there, when I arrived at the airport, he picked me up and he was like, okay, there are 3 megalithic sites, and one of them is right next to the resort we're staying at. That's a very rustic resort called Aviva. And so I didn't think that much of it. Then I said, well, there's 3 megalithic sites. Are they forming a triangle? Are they far apart? He's like, yeah, they're like a kilometer apart. They're pretty far apart. And I said, so it's not a triangle? Is it a straight line? He said, no, it's not a straight line. I said, it's Orion's belt. I hadn't even seen it yet, but I just knew that it was Orion's belt. And he's like, how do you know? I said, I don't know. I just know. And we got there, and I looked at the first of the 3 sites. The one was in the middle. It was right next to the resort we're staying at. And it was perfectly aligned to the summer solstice, the winter solstice, and the equinoxes. And it was connected also to this other site that's, pretty far off in the distance. And that site was called Dragon's Head, or the Head of the Dragon. The site that was one next to our hotel was called Indian Stone. And then the last one was on top of a mountain, and it's called Dolmens. And so we went to all three of these sites, and then I got satellite images of all three, and sure enough, it was a perfect match to the Orion constellation's belt stars, which matches the Giza Plateau, which also matches the Teotihuacan Plateau in Mexico, which matches the Xi'an Plateau in China, and then if you take all three of those sites together of pyramids in China, in Giza, and in Mexico, that from the outside of Earth, like zooming way, way, way out, is also Orion's belt. So Orion's belt showing up in lots of different places. And then also I was at a party not long ago at Blue's house, where we had a bit of a reunion from our Egypt trip. And Matthias Di Stefano was there. And Matthias was talking about going to Scotland, how he loves Scotland. And so he says to me, I said, well, where do you like to go in Scotland, Matthias? Because I was kind of imagining him, wearing a kilt or something. He really loves Scotland. And I said, where do you like to go? He says, oh, you wouldn't know it. It's in the Highlands. It's where no one goes there. And I said, well, try me. And he said, well, I love to go to these two places. One of them is called Urquhart Castle, right? Or Urquhart is how it's written. And it's right on Loch Ness. It's in the Highlands. And then he said, the other place I like to go is a place called Clavacairn. And I said, Clavacairn, isn't that the one that was highlighted in the TV show Outlander? That's a time portal. It's like lots of legends and myth around it. And he's like, yeah, totally. And he said, but it looks different than the way they depicted it in the TV show because it didn't look exciting enough in the TV show. So they used a different location for the actual view of it. But actually, it's three mounds in the shape of Orion's belt. So then I said to him, I'm like, wow, you're not going to believe this. And I said, that place is just outside of Inverness, right? He said, yes. I said, well, about 10 years ago, I made an offer to buy a castle.
Classical.
Right? And it was not just any castle. It was the castle that is from my ancestry. There are two castles. They're both Castle Grant. So one of them is on one side of Inverness, and the other it's kind of like on the southeast side of Inverness, and the other one is on the west side of Inverness, a little bit southwest. And that castle is called Urquhart Castle. And it's actually, if you look at it on Wikipedia, it's called Grant Tower. So the Grant lands are in that whole entire area. Basically, they were acting like countries. They were like fiefdoms, right? So the clans were acting like countries. And the very place of the Orion's Belt constellation is right on the Grant lands. What a small world. And I was going to buy that castle, but they didn't sell it to me because they wanted it to go in an inside job. And I offered twice what everyone else was willing to pay. Which was a real bummer because I really wanted that castle, but I'm kind of glad I didn't get it. What the heck am I going to do with the castle in Scotland? Right?
Invite us all back, a little reunion.
But I am going next month. I'm going with Matthias and a small group, and we're going to go to Clavacairn. It's supposed to be a famous time portal. I think everywhere where there Orion, belt constellation is a time-space portal. And that's what I'm starting to realize now. So we got to the very top of Dolmens in Floripa, and at the very top of Dolmens is also a Stonehenge-style megalithic structure that has every star, literally even the small stars, of Orion constellation in it, in the exact right positions. Now, I didn't know this before I was going. And of course, Orion is hugely significant to me on like multiple levels. Also, even from the company I founded, right, which is the Orion app. And it's Free Your Voice. So, I mean, what a strange coincidence that of all the places I go to in Brazil, and I'm finding megalithic structures directly related to Orion. Now, people had already known that Orion constellation was at the top of Dolmen. We didn't know that. None of us did. We hiked up there, and it's harder hiking up there than going up to the Great Pyramid. It's definitely quite a hike. But the fact that the entire 3 sites were exactly a Orion's belt correlation was not known. And so that was a totally new discovery. And I met with the people that worked with the archaeologists that found the Orion constellation on top of Dolmen's, and they had recorded it. Although he had it slightly off and it wasn't lining up with every star. So when I changed it and used the proper overlay positioning of it, it does. It absolutely does. So this is an example of a very significant synchronicity. And not only that, but while I was there is at the very top of Dolmen's, there's a sarcophagus. It's not a traditional sarcophagus. It's a gigantic stone that's granite that's propped up on 3 smaller stones. And it's in the position of the star Rigel on the Orion constellation, right at the top of this summit of this mountain. And I laid inside that structure. And so you're kind of laying under a rock. There's about 2 feet of space, and you're kind of laying under a rock. And there's even a place, there's like a rock with, looks like a basin in it where you could put your neck so it's comfortable, right? So it's meant to be laid in like this. I looked at the ceiling or the rock right above me, and the whole thing had carving of the flower of life and Alpha Chi Omega right in the center.
Doesn't surprise me.
So that's a pretty big synchronicity. And all of us that were there, our whole team was like, wow, kind of freaked out because that was not part of their plan. They didn't know this. None of them did. And here, within the first few hours of arriving in Florianopolis, we find and make a major discovery about Orion.
Yeah. And to even add on the Scotland part, we had Matthias on last week, and we were talking about what he went through during the eclipse and everything. And there was an important discovery made in Scotland a couple of years back by a guy named Peter Higgs, the Higgs boson particle.
Higgs boson, and he died exactly during the eclipse.
Yep, and in Scotland as well. And that, that particle in many ways broke time. And that's what Matthias is saying, that time is now broken and we have to repair it. What are your insights on that?
That's why I'm going to Scotland with Matthias.
What are you guys going to do there?
We were together a few weeks ago, about a month ago now, in Egypt. We went to southern Egypt and spent several days together there. But yeah, I mean, it's this convergence. He has his mission, I have my own. And they have a very high overlap, interestingly. And we realized that there's so many other people connected into this that, we're all working together now, which is super exciting, right? Because it's accelerated dramatically all of our efforts. So what are we going to do there? Honestly, I think Matthias and I, neither of us have a freaking clue what we're going to do there. But I didn't know what we were going to do in Egypt either. And it turned out to be entirely magical. So,
what did we do in Egypt, Robert?
I mean, we did a lot of, intention setting and everything. We were in Aswan area. I also got to go back up to Giza, and I got to spend the night in the pyramid one other time. So my 18th time. But that was another lucky synchronicity. So I didn't have an appointment to go to the pyramid, and it was fully booked because, it was a full moon and it was also the equinox. So spring equinox. And so the pyramid was fully booked that entire week, and I had no appointment and no one could get me in. I was trying and trying. And then finally I arrived because I had 2 nights in Giza, and I thought, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. If it's not meant to be, then it won't happen. And literally the only way that I could get into the pyramid is if I bumped into someone who had already reserved the pyramid sometime during the course of the day, right, where I was out at different sites. If I bumped into someone who happened to have rented the pyramid for the night and then they invited me to join, and that they actually didn't have the full number of the people that they'd gotten permission to get in, because that is all strictly monitored and controlled. Every single person has to be approved that goes in. So I thought, okay, the only chance this can happen is if someone with a group that was supposed to have 10 people, or supposed to have 9 people show up with only 7 or 8, then I can get in. And so the next morning I went to, we went, a small group with me as well. There were a couple of us, and we went to the Bent Pyramid, because we never went to the Bent Pyramid when you went with me in December. So we went to the Bent Pyramid, and on the way there, I had this download that I was going to discover Alpha Chi Omega on the wall in the Bent Pyramid. And sure enough, I did, like an hour later. Same thing with, I also got this download that I was going to discover Alpha Chi Omega and very detailed petroglyphs on the walls in the Red Pyramid, which I went to after the Bent Pyramid. And we did. We absolutely did. And which was kind of interesting, but we were saying a kind of a prayer in the King's Chamber. And the Bent Pyramid's the most physically challenging pyramid to go in and out of, because it's very steep going in, and it's a real workout. You have to hunch over more than the Great Pyramid. It's definitely a real workout. So we were in the King's Chamber saying a prayer, looking at the bats at the ceiling. And we finished the prayer. We were by ourselves, even though the pyramid was full of people. We happened to get a one moment in time for like 15 minutes when nobody was in there. So we said this prayer. At the end of the prayer, someone starts walking up the stairs, and it's a wooden staircase that they've basically built to get up to that top platform. And I hear this voice from behind me, and it's this guy. His name's Adrian, and he says, "Robert, I can't believe I'm seeing you here." And he'd been to Egypt with me twice before on 2 of my trips. And it's hard to go on 2 trips because I don't usually let people go on more than 1, right? Because lots of people want to go. And so that was also a weird synchronicity, but he really wanted to go on the second trip. And so after the trip, he went and moved. He lived in Costa Rica, but he moved to Switzerland because he decided that he was going to start hosting trips to Egypt and pay it forward. It like changed his life so much. So he happened to be there on a trip where he had brought 9 people. And 9 people had agreed to come, but at the last second, he tells me, he said, well, 2 people dropped out of the trip. And so, but I'm going to the pyramid tonight for the night, and I have 2 spots open. Would you like to join us? If I would have been going down through the shafts to get back out of the pyramid, even 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, I would have missed him altogether.
It was meant to be that you had to go that night.
That's right. And then that night, we ended up going into the pyramid.
Did you find anything that night?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did. And it's so much now, it's like almost overwhelming. I can't even keep up with all of it myself. So it's like I almost have to just be really judicious about, what I'm going out there to say, because it could just seem like this is getting kind of out of hand or out of control. How could it be? But that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely discovered more, and I can share with you the photographs as well of what we discovered in the Red Pyramid and the Bent Pyramids, as well as what was discovered in Floripa.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Also, there's several pyramids. I just showed you the photographs before this call. I showed you the photographs of the pyramids that are hidden under silt layer and trees that are in Brazil that are massive. I mean, was there any question in your mind when you looked at it that was a pyramid?
You're like, look at this hill. I'm like, that's not a hill, Robert.
Right? I mean, Brazil is full of pyramids.
Yeah.
We just don't know about them. So I'm trying to get access to these pyramids too. And I think what's going on is that, mankind goes through this cycle. Mankind is represented by Orion. Literally this cycle of Orion going through the stages of separation and conquering and beating everyone and winning. And this is sort of what was personified by the human race, I think, for the last several thousand years. And now Orion finally is growing up. And he's finally getting to the point where he doesn't want to conquer anymore. I mean, Orion was known for chasing the Pleiades, the 7 sisters, right? He was always trying to conquer even the women of the time. And he went from being kind of a brute holding a club to having a bow and arrow, getting more precise in what he was targeting. And I think what this is all representing is that throughout periods of time, mankind has higher orders of knowledge and lower orders of dimensional knowledge. We are avatars of our higher self, and we are dimensionally limited avatars. So that the gameplay is more interesting in this game, because it is a game. And the game and the aim of the game is to teach us all through experiential learning, not didactic learning, to teach us all who we are so that we can remember, so we can learn how to love and how to be loved. And that the source creator becomes more and more wise because it can see and perceive itself through our unique eyes of perception. So we all exist and will be increasing in the number of existence so that source creator can experience itself through our perspectives. And it's very beautiful. But there are certain points in time when we had less dimensional limitation and more dimensional limitation. And this cycle of time is the precession of equinox, this 24,000-year cycle. And when you consider that there might be some of our history that was in higher dimension, right? It was created in fifth dimension, or maybe even sixth dimension in some cases. For us to even perceive that history and timeline, we have to be resonating in that dimension. So what's happening now is all this lost history is coming up as we raise our frequency.
Yep.
It's like a collective Mandela effect, where now all of a sudden, stuff that's been there forever, which we couldn't see or perceive before, because when it was created, it was a historical period that was in a higher dimension. Now the lost history that was lost because we went down dimensions in our perception is now revealing itself because we are rising back into higher dimensions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I remember when we were walking into the King's Chamber, you told me that when you go in there, you're seeing everything in like vivid imagery. What's on these petroglyphs, what's on these walls. And Thoth is normally very associated with the pyramids, the building of the pyramids. The more I did my research, I found this ancient goddess called Seshat. Is that how you pronounce it?
Seshat, yes. It's the consort of Thoth.
What was her role in all of this? Because I feel that, she is the ancient goddess of writing, the female scribe. There's a rising of the feminine right now.
Music. And by the way, you're going to freak out, but her reincarnation was on our trip.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And she's quite a famous musician. I'll give you that clue.
Yeah.
In fact, she's the one who did the etchings on the wall.
Wow. Was that just a knowing that you downloaded? How did you come to that?
We both figured it out. She walked up it was funny. She walked up the Grand Gallery and she looked back at me, and I'll give you a hint. She's on tour right now. Okay. She looked back at me and she goes, "Robert, we've done this before."
Okay.
And she had a big memory flashback. It was really interesting. And if you remember, during the day, one person made a discovery at Saqqara during that daytime that there were dragons that were etched into the lid of a sarcophagus.
Yeah. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. That was her totem.
The dragon. Yeah.
Seeing the dragons brought back the memory. Geometry is like a QR code for the mind. We look at this and it means nothing to us, right? It's just, okay, we know it links to something, but we don't know what it's going to link to. Geometry, and we look at geometric forms, like this one. We look at this, and we don't realize that it's actually a QR code to our subconscious mind. So as soon as you perceive something, like on the walls or on the sarcophagus lid in Saqqara at the Serapeum, that downloads a ton of new information for you that now your subconscious can have access to, and it can be brought close to the surface so that when you raise your vibration, you can start tapping more into that higher order awareness.
Yeah, because you saw the pattern.
And that's what's happening. So the more you see, the more you will be able to see. Every time I go inside the King's Chamber, it becomes more and more clear. Things I didn't notice before now become noticeable. And it's like, stands out to me like this. Someone posted a photograph the other day, an Egyptologist posted a photograph of the wall on the south wall. And just by looking at that, I discovered 6 new images that I had never seen before. And I've looked at that wall, I don't know, thousands of times. So our consciousness is raising, and as our consciousness raises, we start connecting back into our higher order self. So yes, Seshat was on the trip with us.
And she etched in the petroglyphs that we see on the King's Chamber?
She specifically did, I don't know if she did all of them. She did some of them at least. She did the face of Orion on the wall.
Yeah.
There's a face of Orion on the wall. On
right by
wall.
The cow and the bull.
Right above the bull and the cow. In the exact position where Orion should be. Right? There are 48 constellations that are on the walls. We've now discovered the vast majority of them. And for those that want to be able to do the same thing with us, we created a game called Maya that's all on Apple Vision Pro now. And it is epic. And you can go in there and you have to find the patterns on the walls. And if you mirror match them and you realize how to move the sarcophagus where it needs to be moved, it's like a game, then you can activate the Stargate in the game. It's kind of mimicking what's happening in real life.
Yeah. And Dolores Cannon said that each person is born with a symbol, which is in our auric field. She said that someone with the right symbol would be able to find them, AKA, I'm looking at him, and use them in our time period. What do you think she meant by using them now in this time period? How can we use them now?
I think that the Great Pyramid is actually a spiritual ascension Stargate. You know what it reminds me of? The best analogy I can give for it, Emilio, is you've seen the movie Inception, right?
Yeah.
Right? The one with Leo DiCaprio?
Yeah.
And remember, there was a top. They used these tops to spin the top so that they could like wake up out of the dream, or they'll realize that they're still in the dream. Mm-hmm. If the top never falls, then they're still in the dream type thing. And I think what the Great Pyramid is like the top. It's a totem that wakes us up out of the dream that we put ourselves into. And as we go and start to realize and remember by going to visit the Great Pyramid, because most people I bring to Egypt are like this guy, Adrian. They get so changed by it that they like literally change so many aspects of their life. And some of them go into doing leading tours back to Egypt, right? Like, I didn't even know this about Adrian. And so basically, the Great Pyramid wakes us up out of our slumber. It gets us going, and then we're like, wait a minute, I'm in the game now. Right? And then slowly you start remembering all the abilities you have. And as you start moving into a more avatar state of yourself, then you start tapping into all of the knowledge of all your former and present and future, which there are no past and no present. That's just an illusion. But concomitant avatars of you, your multidimensional self, and all the things that you have learned in those lifetimes, you can tap into because it's all part of you. All of that information, I believe, is entirely embedded. Our entire past and our entire future is all of it embedded in our DNA. Every bit of it. So the knowledge that I learned in my former lifetimes, when I learn how to raise my frequency correctly, I can actually tap into that. And that's what in the TV show on Netflix that's called The Last Airbender is what they refer to as the avatar state. When you achieve the avatar state, you can actually tap into all your former lifetimes, which is not really former, right? They're happening at the same time. And all the things you learned in those lifetimes are now at your disposal. And I've experienced this. when I first started going through my spiritual awakening, there was a bug in me. I immediately just started downloading all kinds of math and physics and really, really kind of advanced concepts. And then I wrote books about it. And that's what my books are, Philomath and Polymath. And my next book, Philosopher, is about to come out. A philosopher just means lover of wisdom. So Philomath is lover of learning. Polymath is when you've achieved many learnings. And philosopher is a lover of wisdom. And ultimately, I believe that the universe is a lover of wisdom. That's why we are all created, and it divides itself into us so that we can perceive it through our own eyes. But there's never been another Emilio, and there never will be another Emilio with your unique perspective. So it's the number of perspectives. It's not even, so if you think about it, in a game, it's not about the number of situations you can create. That's not actually what happens in our lives. What happens in our lives is not what happens to us, it's what we believe happens to us. So you could have the exact same stage play happening, and every character have an entirely different experience of what happened. So it's the number of eyes of perception that make the gameplay more interesting for source creator than all the things that happen in that world. Because you can have infinite perspectives and infinite learning then if you put the focus on the number of eyes rather than the number of situations. This is what I think is totally backwards about what we call multiverse theory. Multiverse is happening, but it's happening through this separation of time in different aspects of me, right? That is a multiverse, but there's not I just don't believe, I believe the universe is a conservationist. And I don't believe that there's a different universe for every decision I made or didn't make. There's enough universes just as we look at time, the way we've separated out to make it linear. When you mash it all together, it's all happening concomitantly. So there's another lifetime, many other lifetimes of me happening right now. Facing similar issues and challenges just with a different backdrop. So we tend to think about, okay, computationally, how hard would it be to create a game that would have an infinite number of scenarios to be able to get the same learning, right? If I'm going to build an AI architecture and I want to have the maximum amount of learning and expansion I can have, the universe expands at the speed of light. How do I expand consciousness? Just think that's maybe a metaphor for just expansion of consciousness. And maybe it's not really the speed of light, but rather the speed of our perception. Right? Because that's a dimensionally limited aspect also. So when you think about it, if I wanted to make it an infinitely complex scenario, what would I have to do? Well, there's one way to go about it, and that would be to create infinite number of circumstances that are all different experiences for everybody. Or I could have one experience for lots of people at a time and have multiple eyes of perception that would then create infinite number of experiences.
Huh.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, just a question there, Robert. Why then, if there's infinite numbers of perspectives of this one self, why are we only perceiving or aware of this point of perception? Like this Emilio, this Robert, this whoever's listening. If there's infinite amounts, why did we choose to only be aware right now of this one? Does that make sense?
Because a knife can't cut itself. Because I like how you got a thumbs up.
That was Orion.
What the heck is this? Man, this AI stuff cracks me up. It's like everyone's listening to us all the time, but that's funny that they picked that one. Consciousness just said, yeah, a knife can't cut itself. There's a synchronicity right there. A knife can't cut itself. A light can't illumine itself. A fire can't burn itself. A tooth can't bite itself. And an eye cannot see itself without the aid of a mirror. Consciousness has to divide itself to perceive itself. And so you have to separate into at least a conscious and a subconscious or conscious and unconscious mind. Because if you're just in the white light, how can you differentiate? There's no differentiation of color until we place a prism in there and create diffraction and then refraction of light. So how do we get the differentiation? You can't. This is why we get divided into Emilio. This is why we get divided into Robert. And Robert includes all of the nature and nurture experiences that I had that will shape and mold my persona, my absorption and my reflection, my diffraction and refraction of light. So each of us represents, like, is 2 times infinity more than infinity? Infinity is infinity. You can multiply it as many, 1 billion times infinity is still infinity. Right?
Yeah.
So this is a very different way for us to understand that the most efficient gameplay in a matrix simulation, a spiritual life simulation, will be to have a limited number of experiences. And we'll only have to render those experiences that we're actually perceiving at the moment we're perceiving it. The rest may not even exist. We just proved that local realism is false. And local realism is, if you're not perceiving something and observing it, it doesn't have a position in your field. So just like my Apple Vision Pro goggles, I don't have to render the entire universe when I'm asleep. I only have to render the stuff I'm looking at the moment I'm perceiving it. And from this game, you can get, infinite amount of perceptions, which perceptions then lead to emotional states. The input stimulus of what we are perceiving as our reality then becomes a judgment by us, and then we derive our emotional position, emotional state, based on that input stimulus. And therefore, because everybody has a different background, they see everything differently. Some people are offended by the same thing that someone else is laughing at. And the truth is then, what the reason for all of this is because you can create infinitude of experiences and learning and expansion. And all of our collective emotional states feed an Akashic record that makes the universal creator more intelligent. It's like an AI, but there's nothing artificial about it. It's the way the universe has always been. Us creating AI is actually us mimicking what the creator did with us.
Yeah. As above, so below.
That's right. So that's why I don't even like to call it AI. Yeah. And obviously there's a lot of bad things that will happen with AI. But there's a lot of bad things that happen with the creation of the universe. It's all about our perception. It's all about the context. It's like we think duality sucks. And duality can suck. Suffering can suck, for sure. But once we have the context of why we're suffering, I can deal with the traffic of LA as long as I know that there's a payback on the other side of arriving in LA. If I'm just stuck in traffic and I don't even know what I'm going to and why I'm going there, that's hell. But as long as I understand that there's a payback, I'm going to see friends up there. It's going to be great to see them. I don't want to miss out on that. Or I got to do a podcast, and it's a very important podcast that I got to do. And I'm going to share something that's going to be critically important for me and for maybe others. Then all of a sudden, the context shifts, and I don't mind the ride up to LA. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with, we think of the square root of 2 is the infinite aspect of the number 2. You could say the number 2 is a compression of an infinite data set that is in its square root. Or if I was looking for your spirit, the numerical representation of your spirit, and I wanted to know, okay, what's Emilio's spirit? I would take the square root of Emilio, and the square root would be your spirit. And then that number squared by itself creates your avatar form, your body.
So we all have an individual number.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know yours?
Yes, I do.
Huh. How did you come to that?
The way you solve it, and this is directly tied into gene keys, but the way you solve it is you take your birthday, you take your name in gematria and the place of your birth in simple gematria. Gematria is just to assign a number to a letter. So the letter A is the number 1. The letter B is the number 2. all the way up until, 26. So basically that's what's called simple gematria. So you find your number of your birthday, you cube that number for the third dimension, and then you take its reciprocal value. And the reciprocal value will have a very long number in it. And very likely, if you take the cube, right, of your number, and then you end up taking it to the nearest prime number, right? So the cube of your number, take it to the nearest prime number, and then take the reciprocal of that value. It will create a number with a repetition cycle in it. That repetition cycle is called a period. So it's like the number 7 is prime. So 0.142857 is the cycle. Same 6 digits repeat infinitely. So it's 0.142857, and then 142857, 142857 infinitely. So it literally makes a sine-cosine relationship in that wave. Okay? So it's a wave. You also have a wave. Your wave becomes your life path, your past and your future. And until the moment you realize that there's a pattern within it, you don't know that there's a pattern. This is a karmic cycle. It's literally in your stars and it's in your number. The karmic cycle is a repetitive cycle. You can break out of that karmic cycle and become golden ratio. And that's another math equation. And the way you do that is you have to go through a hero's journey. The hero's journey cuts you in half. It makes life difficult. Then you take that half form and you square it as you start to find yourself again. Then you add the 1 back to it, the atonement. Then you take the same number and take its square root. Then you add back the half that you lost at the beginning, and then you take its reciprocal value and you will accomplish something no one ever has done before, which is that you've found for every number there's a different golden ratio. And what makes a golden number? What makes a number golden? Do you know?
No.
I'll teach you. So let me share screen here. Okay, so we got a calculator here, right?
Yeah.
So phi is golden. You've heard that before, right? The golden ratio is phi or phi as it's pronounced. Mm-hmm. The way you derive that is you take the square root of 5, right, plus 1, and then divide it by 2. 1.618. It's also Fibonacci. That's the ratio in Fibonacci, right? So what's interesting is if I take the reciprocal value, that's just 1 over this value, something strange happens with only this number. If I take the reciprocal value, look what happens.
It's the other way around.
That's right. It's the same number, but it's missing the 1. It's the only difference. See, 618-033-9887-49895. 618-033-9887-49895. Now, that seems like, wow, that's some hocus pocus. Well, actually, it's not hocus pocus. That's exactly what is a black hole and a white hole. The hole in space-time for consciousness to peer through on both sides of a mirror of absorption and reflection is exactly this mathematics. That's what makes it so special. So the 1 could be the backdrop of space, the vacuum, or this is simply the mirror of our consciousness. So what we see in our world around us is a world with 1 plus, a number, and a world 1 minus, the numbers on the other side. You could say this is conscious versus subconscious or unconscious mind. You follow me?
Yeah.
So, but I can't do this with other numbers, right? Like if I take 7, take its reciprocal, it's not even close, right? It's not similar at all. Or if I take another number like 13, take its reciprocal, okay, is there a pattern in here? Yeah, there is. Look, something interesting. 0.076923, 076923. See the repetition pattern? It'll go on and on like this. But then if I choose any number, right, I can't make those numbers golden. How can I make a number golden? Well, it says something about having to realize something within itself before it finds its own divinity, its old golden nature, its old golden ratio. So I'll give you an example. So give me a number, any number.
9.
9. Okay. So I'm going to take that as 90, just to make it a little easier, right? So 90 will be my number. Okay. I'm going to show you the golden ratio for 90. How do I do it? I start by dividing it in half. Just like the hero's journey tends to kick you in the pants, so it cuts you in half in life. So I'm now going to take 45 and I'm going to square that as I start to realize my spirit, which is the square root function, right? I learn how to square myself. So I square myself. And then I get God back into my life, divinity, whatever your concept of archetype of God is. So we're going to add back the 1.
God is
so
the
2026. 1. Now I'm going to take the square root of that number. Now I'm going to add back the 45 I lost in the beginning. So now I have 90. And look what happens. 90.0111097,397. It's reciprocal. 0.0111097,397. It's identical. So I just found that there's a golden ratio for the number 90. So this breaks the repetition pattern.
Breaks reincarnation.
Exactly. Exactly.
So there's an equation to break the reincarnation cycle.
Bingo. You got it.
How do we apply that to our lives?
Well, first you have to just become aware that it even exists, because you won't become aware of it until the moment that you're supposed to become aware of it. It's just like our higher order DNA. Until you hear and realize and believe that you have higher order, higher dimensional DNA embedded within your DNA, you won't have it. People that believe in miracles will experience miracles. People that don't believe in miracles will never experience miracles. It's not seeing as believing, it's believing as seeing. We don't live in a mental construct of outside influence controlling us. We live in a mental construct of our own creation. We live in a mental construct where it is our limiting beliefs that create the cage of our experience. So enlightenment is when we start to realize and unlearn what we've learned so that we can break out of these mental cages of our own construction. Okay? So what can you do with this? Well, once you get to hear this for the first time, it'll be just like a QR code. It's in a mental matrix. You don't have to actually, you just have to perceive things for it to advance you. And your higher self is always wanting you to advance. And when you experience something that's a crappy situation, what it wants you to learn is to see that it was not crappy after all. That the world is not a place meant to be escaped. The world is a place meant to be fallen in love with and enjoyed. So we all think about the number 2 as related to duality because it's the first separation. 1 divides into 2. But if I were to find the spirit of the number 2, what do I have to do?
Square root.
Take its square root.
Yeah.
Okay, so the spirit of the number 2 is an infinite number. 1.4142. Okay, so remember that for a second. Now, I'm going to add it to the square root of 3, which is, we think of 3 as the Trinity, divine aspect. So I add it to the square root of 3.
Pi.
Really close to pi, right? 3.1416 is pi, so this is 3.146. It's just missing the 1 here. That's interesting. Okay, so what percentage of a circle, because this implies a circle then, that the experience of duality is completed by the divine aspect. So when we look at suffering, unless we have the context of what the divine aspect is and what we're going for, it's like me sitting in traffic going to LA. If I don't know what I'm going for, I don't want to go anymore. If I know what I'm going for and it's going to raise my consciousness, I'm going to have a great experience from it, I'm gladly going to wait in traffic. So we need the context of it. So let's say that this creates a full circle, because that's what this implies. The experience of duality plus the experience of divinity equals full circle. So now let's divide this by the square root of 2 to find what component or the number of degrees that are represented by the square root of 2. Okay? So let's divide this by the square root of 2 and then take its reciprocal value. So in order for me to find the number of degrees of the circle that represent the suffering and the difficulty, I have to take this number and multiply by 360 degrees. So 0.449489 times 360 degrees of a circle to find how much of the circle is suffering. And by the way, even the symbol for the square root of 2 is mimicking the symbol for Saturn, which represents lead. Now look, isn't that an interesting number? This is the number of degrees that the lead represents on the circle. Now, what's interesting about this number? I just showed you the golden ratio is 1.618. But not only is this golden, because I also said what makes it golden, like really the thing that makes it golden, is that its mantissa remains the same. Mantissa is the decimal extension.
Yeah.
So remember, I had 1.618 and then 0.618. But look what this is doing. 161816. This is giving me a palindrome of its reciprocal value. 618 is the reciprocal number of 1618. So wait a minute. The experience of duality, which is the spirit of duality, the suffering, the difficulty, is just suffering until we put it in the context of the square root of 3, which is the spirit of the divine. And then lead of our experience turns to gold.
Alchemy.
Alchemy. This is the true alchemy. The understanding that all of our experiences that we thought were there just to make our lives miserable were actually there to evolve us, to grow us, and that we chose it all. It's not there because someone else chose it for us. We chose it all. We're not going to come to Earth in this dimensionally limited avatar and choose the easy path. I'm not going to be satisfied if I'm a mountain climber with climbing the hill behind my house. I want to go for Everest. If I know that death isn't real, I'm going to get the most out of it. You know, when I went to college, I didn't study as much as I should have. I still did well. But then I went to grad school. And when I was in grad school, I was like, you know what? I'm only cheating myself. I'm going to study everything. I'm going to learn everything. I'm paying big bucks to be here. I paid for my school myself. I'm like, I'm not going to waste a single moment of this. We would do the same thing coming here to this Earth School project that is a spiritual life simulation game to expand our consciousness. We don't even remember the easy teachers in junior high and high school. We remember the hard ones. We remember the hard coaches, not the easy ones. And in life, we no longer have the same kind of teachers because we're not in school every day. But our teachers now are just the experiences that we experience every day. And you know you're on the right path when you're seeing all the synchronicities. And this is exactly what Carl Jung said. You know, he said that you can track your progress towards individuation, which is another word for enlightenment, by the number of synchronicities you register and experience. So lead turns to gold. When we have the proper context, it literally turns to gold. And each one of us, every single number can be golden now and can break out of the cycle of samsara, which is that repetition pattern.
I have another synchronicity for you, Robert.
Go ahead.
So we're actually recording this on 4/23, which was
yes, indeed,
Shakespeare's birthday.
Very, very important date. This is a very important date because today is, because it's a leap year, the 114th day of the year. But normally on non-leap years, it's 113th day. And what does this even represent? Well, did you know that Shakespeare's sonnets actually are all structured around the structure of the Great Pyramid?
Yeah, thanks to Alan.
Mm-hmm. And so the middle of the Great Pyramid, the exact middle where the throat chakra chamber is, which, by the way, after our trip to Egypt, Jean-Pierre Houdin published a paper from the muon scans exactly corroborating where I said in my television show 4 years ago there would be another chamber, and the chamber leading up to it is another grand gallery, exactly at the angle that I said it was going to be at, because we decrypted it from Da Vinci's work.
Yep.
This all just came out in the last couple of months. So the 113th sonnet is a beautiful sonnet. It really is. And it's exactly related to all this stuff we're talking about. And I'll read it to you because it's directly related to this day. But now I also want to read the 114th, because 114 is also related to pi. It's pi minus 2. It's the 0.14 that equals 1/7. Okay? So the 113th sonnet by Shakespeare. So you were prompted, obviously, to say this for a reason. Now, you don't know this, but on this day 2 years ago, I was in the Great Pyramid by myself.
That was your 11th time, right?
Yes, it was. And that was also the day that the angel Metatron appeared to me inside the king's chamber, laying in the sarcophagus. And it was one of the most profound experiences of my entire life. So this is the 113th sonnet, which represents the throat chakra chamber, or the meta throne, because there's a throne inside that chamber. I've astral traveled there. There's only one piece of furniture. And actually, the Egyptian government even corroborated this. It said that's what they believe is there. It's a stone, square-shaped throne. It's very simple, like a box-shaped throne in a cube-shaped room. And here's Shakespeare's sonnet. Since I left you, mine eye is in my mind. Think about perception and perspective. And that which governs me to go about doth part his function, and is partly blind. Seems seeing, but effectively is out. For it no form delivers to the heart of bird, of flower, or shape which it doth latch, or attach. Of his quick objects hath the mind no part, nor his own vision holds what it doth catch. For if it see the rudest or the gentlest sight, the most sweet favor or deformest creature, the mountain or the sea, the day or the night, the crow or dove, it shapes them to your feature. Incapable of more, replete with you, my most true mind thus maketh my eye untrue. We don't perceive the world as it is, we perceive it as we are. That's what he means when he says, nor his own vision holds what it doth catch. For if it see the rudest or the gentlest sight, the most sweet favor, or the deformest creature, the mountain or the sea, the day or the night, the crow or the dove, it shapes them to your feature. This is what we're starting to realize. This is the transcendence of duality. Realizing that what we see is only a part of a larger truth, not the whole truth. This is the realization that what we thought were facts are merely facets of a larger perception of truth. And when you realize that there can be no real objective truth other than the love that ties all of it together for the reason for doing it. For the universe is a philomath, a lover of learning. It is an ultimate philosopher and wants to be able to gain the wisdom of empathy for every possible circumstance perceived. We are here to learn how to feel, to learn how to love. It's the emotional states that are the most valuable. And then if we go to sonnet 114, let's just see what the universe is giving us as a message here. Because I have not read this in a while. And I don't even know what it says. I got to go back and do the search for it. Okay, sonnet 114.
How many total sonnets are there?
154, but the last 153rd and the 154th are actually the same story told twice from different perspectives, two different eyes. Okay, and that is what's called the alchemical bath sonnets. It represents the masculine merger with the feminine. It's what we just did with the eclipse.
Huh.
The sun merging with the moon. Okay, here we go. Thank you, universe. Here's a synchronicity. Or whether doth my mind being crowned with you, crowned, drink up the monarch's plague, this flattery. Or whether shall I say mine eye saith true, and that your love taught it this alchemy, to make of monsters and things indigest, such cherubims as your sweet self resemble, creating every bad a perfect best. I love this. As fast as objects to his beams assemble, oh, 'tis the first, 'tis flattery in my seeing, and my great mind most kingly drinks it up. Mine eye well knows that with his gust is greeing, and to his palate doth prepare the cup. If it be poisoned, 'tis the lesser sin, that mine eye loves it and doth first begin. Whoa, holy moly. That is exactly what I just said to you about changing the lead into gold.
He even used the word alchemy.
Let's read this again. Or whether doth my mind being crowned with you, the crown chakra, drink up the monarch, the king's plague, this flattery? Or whether shall I say mine eye saith true? What I see is true, right? It's a fact. And that your love taught it this alchemy, to make of monsters and things indigest, things that we cannot digest, such cherubims, angels, as your sweet self resemble, creating every bad a perfect best. Every suffrage, every difficulty, every challenge. Enlightenment is when we can realize that it all exists for a reason, to expand our consciousness, to expand our empathy, to expand our love. Creating every bad a perfect best. We all experience things where we think this is the worst thing that ever happened to us. And actually, with some time, we realize it was the best thing that ever happened to us. That is alchemy. As fast as objects to his beams assemble, oh, 'tis the first, 'tis flattery in my seeing, and my great mind most kingly drinks it up. Mine eye well knows what with his gust is greeing, and to his palate doth prepare the cup. If it be poisoned, 'tis the lesser sin, that mine eye loves it and doth first begin. Basically, what this is saying is, this could not have been a more perfect illustration. Here's another synchronicity. It could not be a more perfect illustration of what I just taught you mathematically. This is exactly the universe speaking to us and telling us that this is such a divine principle. It's not what happens to us that actually happens to us. It's what we believe happens to us. Therefore, you can shift it. Therefore, when you experience that something was terrible, you could write a history book in your life. And you could say in your journal, this was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I got fired from my job, or something bad happened. My girlfriend left me. You name it. Fill in the blank. But with some perspective. Being able to zoom out so that you're not too close to the tree to see the forest. You could see that it was actually the most divine thing that ever could have happened to you. And therefore, history changed. History changes with context. That's exactly what's happening right now. Humanity is getting its context on what history actually is and was. And now we're starting to remember the higher order perception just on an as above, so below correspondence way. That's why all of the ancient sites are starting to come up all over the place. That's why everyone's interested in all these ancient sites that were left behind in higher dimension that we are not perceiving until we raise our dimension. We're only perceiving what we think are facts, but they're not facts. They're just facets. So you just perfectly followed your intuition to raise the question of the synchronicity, and you had no idea, and neither did I, that it was going to teach us exactly the precept that I just taught. As if it's putting an exclamation point on what I taught. Even using the word alchemy, which I have not seen in any of the other sonnets.
Yeah.
How beautiful is this universe?
Beautiful.
When we are in alignment with it, it's the most amazing thing. It's all in our perception. That's how we can be in alignment. Our perception defines it. Our eyes make it so. How our mind interpolates that. The last sonnet I just read you, it says, or the eye of my mind is untrue. My mind's eye is untrue. I realize this. It's a fact, but it's not a fact. It's a facet, and that's just part of a larger prism. Enlightenment is when we decide to choose love instead of being right.
That in itself is a huge teaching. And now that you brought it up, your experience 2 years ago, what did the angel of Metatron teach you?
I gave a prayer in there that was like super powerful. And it was a prayer that I had to open the throat chakra of Earth, which is also governed by Orion. So if you look up on the internet, what is which zodiac sign is responsible for the throat chakra? It's Taurus. And Orion is in Taurus. There are three constellations in the decan of astrology because the Egyptian year was split up into 10-day segments. So not only did they have bull, but to have greater specificity, they brought it down to each 10 days, it would have a different thing. So if you look at your degrees, you could actually do, if you really wanted a crazy accurate astrology, you can do it. This is the higher dimension of astrology, decan. The decan of astrology is the method also. There were 36 decan of astrology in the Atlantean year. So you could break it down just by knowing the degrees, right? And I just looked at it's 108, another synchronicity. That's such a profound number in Buddhism and Hindu, you name it. But it also represents the radius of the moon. It's the feminine, the eye of Horus coming in right now, right? You can recognize this aspect in your life coming out, right? If you start to allow yourself to perceive it and change the framework of your belief system. The framework of your belief system is what limits us across the board, right? And this is why this can be so powerful. The eye of Horus is something that's been coming in such a major way, on the eclipse, because this is all related to this. On exactly the eclipse, I don't know where you were for the eclipse. Did you go to Austin or something?
I was in Madrid. I was in Spain.
You're in Madrid?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was in Brazil, and I got the clear instruction to be in Brazil. So I went to Brazil, and what was interesting about it was that I ended up visiting in Brasilia a structure that I'd been recommended to go visit, and the structure was called the Temple of Goodwill. Now, the Temple of Goodwill is a pyramid with 7 sides, right? So 7 is crown chakra, right? So it's a pyramid with 7 sides that has the same slope angle as the Abu Rawash pyramid, the one on the dollar bill.
Yeah.
Okay. So I went there, and after I went there, inside this pyramid, there happened to be this whole thing of like Egyptology in the basement. Like, so strange. Turns out that the guy that was president of Brazil, his name was Kubitschek, in the 60s, 70s timeframe, he decided to build Brasilia as the capital of Brazil. Originally, it was going to be a town called Alto Paraíso that's built on top of a giant crystal. Like it's like the Sedona of Brazil. Very spiritual town. They've got little green alien things everywhere. Wherever you go, there's like people driving around with like aliens on the back of their car and stuff like this, or extraterrestrials. It's not politically correct to call them aliens.
It's a they.
It's a they. It's a they. And so, I went there, and I was sort of really interested in this whole thing because at the time of the eclipse was exactly where the crossover point was, exactly 1:37 p.m. in Austin, Texas. And this is where it was crossing over the eclipse that was from 2017. And so if you looked at the image of what it looked like, the eclipse of all 3 eclipses in 2017, which was in August of 2017, the eclipse, and it was a very powerful eclipse for me. I remember it very well. The percent of totality in Newport Beach, where my office is, was 61.8%. Exactly. Golden ratio. I went up on the roof and I looked at it through my Mylar, through my big telescope, and I had giant binoculars as well. And it was a thing, and it was definitely played a major role in my spiritual awakening. And then the next eclipse was in 2023, in October. And then the next eclipse was this year, right? It's a few weeks ago. The crossover point that forms a giant X, and all 3 of those eclipses together made the shape of a letter A across the country. The letter A shape and the slope angle of that letter A was identical to the Abu Rawash pyramid. Did you see this?
Was it that the 67.83 degrees?
67.38 degrees. Yes. Right? That's kind of a trip, right?
Yeah, what's the connection
come on,
there?
man.
Huh.
Right? Like, what in the heck is that all about? That's such a crazy trip. And that connection is all over the place. That triangle I just learned today is literally E equals MC squared. No joke. I just learned this today, and it'll be in my next book. So I went to this place that was this pyramid, right? And the pyramid was, it was a beautiful place, and it was the entire city of Brasilia was built in the form of Isis. So the whole thing was like, because the Kubitschek thought he was the reincarnation of Imhotep. So he built this whole city with like Isis form and everything. It's not an airplane. Everyone thinks it's an airplane. It was Isis. And so basically this is the, let me pull this up for you. This is what the pyramid looks like.
Oh, wow.
Pretty epic, right? You see this right here also? That's an owl.
Euler.
Yeah. You don't see many owls during the daytime.
What?
There were owls all over the place here.
What? So
that's a trip, right?
Templo de Paz, the Temple of Peace. Why is it called that way?
It was named this by the people that built it, and I'll show you some of the other pictures of this because it's pretty epic. It's like, wow, unbelievable. There's a spiral in the center of the room on the floor, and the spiral is crazy because it was directly linked. You asked about my significant synchronicities. This was one. We had no idea it was in this place. We had no idea where we're going.
Wait, so Robert, this pyramid is identical to the slope angle of the one in Abu Rawash?
And the one that represented the eclipse.
Huh. And you just happen to be there.
I happened to be there. We landed in Brasilia before we're driving out to Alto Paraíso, High Paradise, which is where I stayed. And I'd been fasting for 9 days at this point. No food.
Yeah.
Only water. This is what the floor looked like. You walk in this spiral around the floor until you get to the center. Kind of a trip, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's that all about? So I did that. Right. And then I realized also that that there was a Egyptian thing underneath. Right. Again, I just come out of Floripa where, there was this whole thing about Orion, right? And then I go into this place where there's this large room that is legit like a, they don't even let you film inside there, right? They don't even let you film. And so I went in there and it was like a preparation room or something for a ceremony. It was the craziest thing.
How long ago was that built?
I think it was built in like the 70s or something. I mean, it's
recent.
Yeah, recent. And so this is what this room looked like.
Oh, wow.
And who's that on the wall?
Is that Osiris?
It's Osiris Orion. I'm in Brazil, man.
Just come to Colombia. We'll see what happens next.
Right? What a trip. Like, damn, what is going on with this? And so then when we came out of this place and we went straight, we timed it so that right at 137, and that's the number of God. That's literally the magic of 137. Richard Feynman, the famous physicist, said, we know that God wrote that number, but we don't know how he pushed his pencil. It's the most enigmatic, mysterious number in the world, right? It also happens to be the date of my birthday, 137th day of the year this year.
Coming up.
On leap years, exactly. May 16th. So 137 happens to be the separation between light and dark. It's the electron coupling constant. It's the constant that the Higgs boson was based on. 137, the crossover of the eclipse, is exactly when Higgs died. The Higgs boson is based on the number 137, which is called alpha. It's a math constant, dimensionless constant. What a coincidence, man. Seriously? It's such an epic game when you actually understand what it is that what we're going through, what all of the purpose of all of this is, when you have the context of the divine aspect, right? So Osiris, remember, you got Taurus, and within Taurus, you've got Osiris, or in the Egyptian pantheon, or it's Orion, Eridanus, and Auriga. Those are the three constellations. So in the Egyptian year, you could have this absolutely perfected form. That's why numerology is actually more accurate than astrology is, because it's really, really detailed. There, you have to understand the higher level of astrology to actually get into the nuances of each of the degree positions and which actually decan it sits within. What's the decan that it's sitting within? And so, as I was, looking at the country, of course, as well, you could see that the way that the constellation, not the three eclipses basically overlap the country, come into this very, very unique, bizarre alignment, right? Which is what I was just talking about, which is the shape of, how all of these three eclipses basically overlapped each other in this position that creates the letter A. And I saw this for the first time probably, some time ago, right? I don't remember exactly when it was that I saw it, but it kind of wigged me out, right? And so I did a post on Instagram about this, and I also tagged it to "Why is this everywhere?" The number 1/137. And because it is literally everywhere in all of physics. It's the most important number in all of physics. You literally can't miss it. So here's what I noticed. Now, this is beyond bizarre.
Yeah.
Here's the trajectory of the 3 eclipses. Look at that.
That's the symbol.
That's the Abu Rawash. That's Leonardo da Vinci, right? That's the Vitruvian Man, and it's the dollar bill.
What?
It makes a perfect, we get the eye of Providence. The Vitruvian Man gets the eye of Providence, the eye of Horus. This is the left eye up here. With these 3 eclipses. And this is Orion, by the way. Vitruvian Man is Orion. It's Osiris. He's cut into 14 parts. At the moment of the eclipse is 137, right at the heel of his foot, right here. What a trip, man.
What's the universe trying to tell us?
Well, but wait, there's more. In order for this to fit, I had to tilt the Vitruvian Man and the square in the circle of Vitruvian Man exactly 51.8 degrees. That's the slope angle of the Great Pyramid.
What?
You see what I'm saying? It's a matrix. And we're slowly waking up ourselves out of this matrix. And that's the beauty of this. It's a beautiful game and we're starting to remember our own divinity as a result. That's the point of this. So that we can remember all of this experience and expand through it. You just look up this number. This is from I think it was from Number File or from like PBS video on the number 137 and its enigmatic nature that nobody quite understands. This is the number that shows up everywhere in all of physics. And alpha, as it's denoted, actually means bull. It's Aleph. So do you know what else happened that week? You want to see another interesting synchronicity?
Let's do it.
This could actually just be, I could do like tons of podcasts just on crazy synchronicities. So there was did you hear about the sacrifice that they did in Jerusalem of the red heifers?
No.
So it's kind of a funny story. I was in LA and I ended up having dinner one night at the Proper, the hotel in Santa Monica. And I'm sitting there with a friend who wanted to meet Zach Bush. So she says to me, "Oh, I'd really like you to introduce me to Zach Bush." And this friend has had a kind of a rough year on multiple levels, and that's why I was visiting her. And for lots of reasons that I won't go into, but she said, "I'd really like to meet Zach Bush." And I'm not kidding you. Within 10 minutes of her saying that, Zach Bush walks up to the bar. And I turn around, I'm like, "Zach." And he's like, "Robert, oh my gosh." So of course we ended up having dinner together. And he tells me, he says, "Oh, I'm only here tonight, for the night because I'm on my way from New Zealand. And now I'm going to Israel." I said, "What are you going to Israel for?" He said, "I'm going to Israel with these rabbis that want to do this ceremony to bring back, the Messiah." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "This is kind of a crazy time to go." He goes, "Yeah, I know, but I feel like I should go. So I'm on my way to Israel tomorrow in the morning." So I'm like, "Zach, do you know about the red heifers?" And I just looked up this thing on the red heifers. So I was like, what's the story with this red heifer thing? Because remember, the bull and the cow, prominent aspect of throat chakra. That's what they control, right? The throat chakra is in Taurus, specifically within Orion, in fact. And the Apis bull is the representation of Orion, of Osiris. So there were 5 red heifers. So if you just Google red heifer sacrifice, this is the craziest story I think I've ever heard. So they have this Texan, right? they're going to find the red heifer and the third temple end time prophecy. So they got to go find these red cows that have to be virgin female cows, right? Cows.
That's a heifer?
That's a heifer. Mm-hmm. So this is to fulfill prophecy. Okay? This is a real thing. It sounds crazy, and it showed up in lots of newspapers all over the place. So the Messianic Prophecy Bible Project, okay? The red heifer and the third temple and end time prophecy. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is a requirement of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. This will be a lasting ordinance both for the Israelites and for the aliens living among them.
What?
Okay. So a red heifer is supposed to be part of the sacrifice before they build the new temple, the third temple. Remember, the first temple was Solomon, the second temple was Herod, and the third temple hasn't been built yet. So they have to go find these red cows without blemish, and even one white fur on it, one strand of it, makes it blemished. So they have to find these perfect cows. So they actually set up an altar in Jerusalem to sacrifice them.
Is that the ceremony that Zach went to carry out?
I don't know if he ended up going to the ceremony or not, but I can tell you that they had the altar. There's like full on an altar. Oh my gosh. It's in Ezekiel 43:21.
Ezekiel is
432, 4321. You've got to be kidding me. Wow. This is so crazy. All right. So can you see the screen here still?
Yeah.
The picture of where it says Ezekiel, law of the red heifer, a type and shadow of Jesus Christ.
I can't see the picture.
Okay. So let me stop sharing.
Yeah.
I'll do it again. So share.
We're making live discoveries.
Yeah, we are. That's exactly what's happening right now. All right. Now can you see it? The law of the red heifer.
I'm just seeing the browser right now.
Yeah, it's just the browser.
Yeah.
It's just a browser. Okay, but you see where it says BYU Scholars Archive, Law of the Red Heifer?
Yeah.
Okay. So the red heifer ceremony, the altar is built and the priests are ready. Can you still see it now?
Yeah, I think you have to scroll up a little bit.
So the third temple update, altar already built. If you want to see the time of year it is, look at the calendar, right? And there are a lot of these, Christian people following this thing. They're saying it's like the coming of the Messiah, right? This is a thing. It's really a thing, like among several people. And some of these people were saying like crazy stuff like, oh, we're going to have 3 days of darkness. They were fully expecting it. It didn't happen, right? And I never believed that was going to happen. But I've been tracking this story because we're in a UN-verse. So everything that's on the outside of us is some reflection of what's inside of us. Okay? So the red heifer. So then I started to try to figure out, where did the red heifers come from?
Texas.
Yeah, and not just any place in Texas.
Austin.
No, even better. Although I was born in Texas.
Really?
Uh-huh.
I lived in the woodlands.
And yeah, they were there are 5 red heifers that were found. They had to do a search all over the world. And they were found in Texas, yes. But they were actually found in a town called Rockwall, Texas, which is very significant to me. 4 of them were found in Rockwall. And not just anywhere in Rockwall, but at literally the field next to my parents' house.
Robert, you're everywhere out here.
It's true, man. I'm telling you, this is like so crazy. This guy went and found the red heifers in Rockwall, Texas. And it's right here in, you can see this. What these red cows from Texas have to do with war and peace in the Middle East. This is on CBS News. No joke. bringing red cows to the Holy Land, red heifers, which now graze in a secure, undisclosed location, right? I mean, this was a whole thing, man.
What?
And they got them from literally my parents' hometown they've been living there for 30 years. It's a small little town in Texas, in the middle of nowhere.
So they want to raise a new temple for the coming of
Yes.
a new Messiah? Is that what?
That's exactly what they want.
And how do you see
That's
that?
exactly what they want. Byron Stinson is the guy who found him, a Texan who helped bring the cows to Israel instead of the gathering. For me, the red heifer is red for the blood of Jesus Christ, and that's why it's red. I mean, can you believe this? This is so crazy. I mean, and you hadn't even heard about this, right?
No.
It's a trip. So Byron Stinson found them in Rockwall. I got to find that article. So Byron Stinson, Rockwall, Texas, red heifer. Okay, from Texas, red heifers needed for temple to arrive. Red heifer discussion with Byron Stinson. Oh, these are all like YouTube. I don't want to go through the whole video. But yeah, it was Rockwall, Texas. Oh, here it is. Came to a ranch, Rockwall, Texas. Here it is. My goodness.
Sir Grant's
So
hometown.
you don't even know what you stepped into. Right. So let's see, here it is. Okay. Here it is, the red heifer.
It's everywhere.
And look, here it is. Rabbis from the Temple Institute in Jerusalem came to a ranch near Rockwall, Texas. And they found 4 of the cows there, literally bordering on my parents' house. I couldn't even believe it. Yeah. So all of this is connected.
To the eclipse.
It's a matrix of mind. To the eclipse. Absolutely. Absolutely. The whole purpose of the eclipse is a representation of the marriage of the red king and the white queen. It's a Osiris and Isis relationship. And what that really represents, that's just a metaphor for the larger representation, which is truly the merger between the left and right brains and the heart-brain consciousness. When finally the left brain becomes equal with the right brain. We have a left eye that is connected to our right brain. The right brain is the seat of creativity and intuition. The right eye, if you're right-handed, is connected to the left brain. They cross over and make an X. That's the true alpha chi omega. The left brain is the alpha. The X as the center is where the optic nerve crosses over at the pituitary gland, the crown chakra. And then the omega is the other side, the feminine side of the brain. These are represented by 2 cows. We have a cerebellum, right? It's all related to the bull. The cerebrum is a ram inside our brain. So all of this is metaphor that's attached to this exact concept that people don't really have a clue about, right? That this is what it's really representing is when man transcends to become godlike. Because it's not about being good, it's being in perfect balance. When you're in perfect balance between your masculine and feminine, then everything changes. It's like the antenna becomes a perfect antenna. So I walked out of that temple of peace.
Yeah. Oh, we're
also
going back
called
to Brazil.
we
we went to Israel. We came back a little bit to full circle.
I walked out of this place, and as I walked out of the place, I looked up in the sky. This is right after the eclipse, and I'm of course very far away. And here's the funny one. Here's a picture of me and Zach that night when we just randomly ended up meeting. Right? I mean, just by chance, and he's going off to this ceremony. I don't know if he went to the red heifer ceremony or not. He didn't know about the red heifer thing, so he may have gotten there. I can't wait to call him. I got to give him a call. So then, I came out of this place when I was in Brazil, and what's the first thing that I see? I look up in the sky, and the one thing that could represent all of this kind of coming together in this symphony of like majesty and beauty, which represents now this raising of the feminine and the left eye of Horus in our perception, right? And now look at this. At that exact moment, this was what was in the sky.
Whoa.
An eye of Horus.
Whoa. You're a walking,
literally
breathing
a freaking eye of Horus.
You're a walking, breathing synchronicity, brother.
Dude, I know it's nuts, right? It's completely, absolutely without precedent. You can even see the medulla oblongata coming down.
Yeah. It's
like
the brain.
Here's the eye. I mean, it's like legit. So what I'm saying to you is our entire life experience is all just illusion, man. This is representing the rays. And look what time it is right now.
1:37. We went into a vortex or something.
Dude, I'm telling you, you asked me about synchronicities. We've already had probably 10 right here on this call. Yeah. So it's all around us, and it's just representing this. As we get more and more balanced, the antenna of our brain becomes better able to receive. We have a higher self that is a conceiver. We have a brain that is a receiver. And, we have a consciousness that is a perceiver. The higher self, conceiver, the brain is the receiver, and the lower self, the avatar self, is the perceiver. But if we can conceive it, we can achieve it. So we are perceiving this as separate. We're all separate, but we're not actually separate. It's the context that we're missing. We created as a higher self, a lower dimensional avatar self that's dimensionally limited, because it would never make sense to be omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent in any gameplay. And we're playing poker. I know the hand you're going to be dealt. I know what you're going to do with that hand. There's no fun in this game. The only fun game would be to dimensionally limit ourselves. And that's exactly what we do. And that's why about 2 weeks ago, I wrote something called the 24 Precepts of Universal Mind.
I saw them. We'll link them here as well.
And, this 24 Precepts of Universal Mind thing is really fascinating, because if you just read the first few lines, and this is meant to be, I woke up in the middle of the night, it was a channeling. It was literally meant to be like an instruction manual for playing the game. The universe is mental. Realize that you live in a U-inverse of your own creation that is an interconceived notional experience and chosen soul journey by your dimensionally limited avatar self, thoroughly designed by your multidimensional, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent higher self. Your conscious awareness informs your mirror separation of conscious persona and mask and unconscious mind experience in your U-inverse. You are the playwright, the director, the producer, the actor in your own life stage play. And all the world is a stage. Your higher self is chosen for you to participate in a multiplayer spiritual life simulation game, a game in which the participant is a dimensionally limited avatar. That's you. The purpose of the game construct is to expand awareness of yourself by dividing awareness into both conscious and unconscious minds, uniquely allowing the one source creator to divide itself into the many, and for the experience of observing itself through the greater and greater variations of angular degrees of perception and unique conditioning biases. Ultimately, this multifunctional experience enables increasing empathy and wisdom experienced by the higher self for infinite circumstances and scenarios, thus increasing the knowledge database of space-time memory, the cumulative collection of all biased observational emotional responses of all divisions of source creation. In this construct, you will be born with a self-bias as a hero, From the moment awareness crystallizes into your persona, the hero bias, through a series of experiences introducing shame, blame, and vulnerability as uncomfortable and undesirable perceptions that ultimately mold and shape your self-identity, reflected awareness of your persona, as well as absorbed villain characteristics formed as a direct result of your hero identity and affiliation. If you're interested, you go back and read the rest. This is all about how to come back to the remembrance of who we are, merging the subconscious, unconscious, and conscious minds into one for what Carl Jung refers to as individuation, which is the superconscious mind.
Robert, what would you say, because we're talking about the higher aspect of ourselves and then the limited dimensional avatar self, what is Metatron, as you mentioned that Orion is a story of humanity and of mankind. What is Metatron conceiving and what is Orion perceiving right now in this part of the story?
Metatron is conceiving the ability to perceive itself through multiple eyes of perception. So Metatron separates itself into the many for the joy of perceiving itself through our eyes of perspective and for the joy of becoming one again ultimately. Orion is just a representation of all of mankind. Metatron is also referred to as Yahweh or the lesser Yahweh. It is a person who's in perfect balance, who was once a man, who learned to become an angel and went through the cycle, right, of experiencing this hero's journey. What we read about in our past is also at the same time what will be happening in our future. It's a cycle that repeats. We learned about Atlantis falling, and before that, Lemuria. But actually, when we understand that time loops on itself, and what we consider the distant past is also the far future, what will be happening for us next is the rebuilding or the building of Lemuria.
Therefore, Seshat hasn't inscribed the petroglyphs on the king's chamber yet.
That's right.
What a trip.
Yeah, what we're looking at, if you look at Edgar Casey's prediction for the safe zones on Earth when the pole shift happens, you will find some really interesting stuff. What you'll find is that, let's pull it up for you. There was actually a Forbes article on this. I couldn't believe it. So it was Edgar Casey, safe zones. Safe zones, pole shift. Forbes.
It better be in Newport Beach.
Yeah, no, it's not looking good for Newport, to be honest, after looking at this map. Shocking doomsday map of the world.
Oof.
Billionaire escape plans.
What? This is on Forbes?
Uh-huh.
Look at the time it was posted. Go up real quick.
11:22, of course. Look at this. I mean, you can't see it, unfortunately. Okay. So if you look at this map, it's not looking great for California.
Future map of the United States. Huh.
Yeah. So what this article is about is all these billionaires that are building bunkers.
No way.
Deep in the ground in places like Hawaii and in Montana. And this is a thing. It is really true.
Billionaire Bill Gates acquired land in Arizona.
Belmont, yeah. And Arizona and also in Montana. They're buying up water rights. Oh, yeah. So this is part of that map.
Is that Africa?
Mm-hmm. Huh. But look at that.
Yeah.
There's a big new landmass to the west of Spain.
That's Atlantis. Ooh.
Yep. And then if we look in the Pacific Ocean, Australia's got a new landmass underneath it as well, and New Zealand becomes massive. This is Europe.
Oh.
Look.
What is that?
There's an Atlantis thing right here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How far out are we talking about with this pole shift?
I hate to even say it because I think people will like kind of freak out, but let's just put it this way, we're due.
It says Lemuria on this map. Why did they choose to put that in a Forbes article called Lemuria?
Well, because this is what Edgar Casey and this other guy, Scallion, said.
This is Edgar Casey's prophecy. Got you.
Yeah. That California is going to turn into like 150 islands.
Wait, so did we put a date on this or no?
I did not, no. But you can figure it out. And I will, I'll show you something that kind of leads me to maybe one conclusion, but I don't want to be one of those guys that like is considered the doomsday dude, you know? That's not my thing. And I don't want anyone to send me money. I don't want anyone to like, you know, set up a house outside my house or something like that. No, thank you. I'm not, I have no desire to be, you know, some sort of cult leader. None whatsoever.
We've had enough of those. We've had enough of those.
Yeah. No, I don't want that. I have no desire for that. It's not fun. It's way overrated, I think. And the Kool-Aid doesn't even taste good. So it's like, you know, no thanks. But when we found the stuff on the walls in the King's Chamber, what is being represented is a planetarium. Okay, and it looks like this. So this would just be the archetypal representation of it. These are all the constellations, right? Orion is in here, Cygnus is in here, Lyra's in here, it's all in here. Now, what we found was that all the stuff, and this was just before we went to Egypt with you, all the stuff on the walls we didn't know was matching exactly what is on the Deacon of Astrology. So it was matching precisely the same type of archetypal stuff, you know, and that was kind of a trip for us because I was like, wait, what? How in the heck can this even be that we're, you know, seeing all this stuff on the walls? And then I finally, you know, here's an example of one. Right? Now, if you look closely at this, you can see the faint outline of a woman and an arm and an arrow. Mm-hmm. And there's an arrowhead right here.
Yep.
And the arrow comes down like this, and her arm is like pulling what might be the string of a bow, right? With a bow and arrow right here. And then it looks like this is her head, and this is her nose, and her hair streaming back, her back, and she's riding on what looks like a horse or something. Here's the hind leg of the horse. See the other hind leg?
Yep.
Right, and there's the front leg of the horse. It might be a wing as well. And right over the wing, you can actually even see a word. There's a T
Thoth.
Right here. Thoth. What the heck? This is the King's Chamber on the east wall. What the heck? Right?
Who do you think etched that in?
I believe Da Vinci did that. I don't believe he did the rest of this. I believe you can do this with thought. That crystal and quartz crystal can carry memory. We know this already. It's used for that. And so you can think a thought and put it into water and then freeze the water and find the picture of your thinking. I mean, yesterday I just learned that Google has the ability now to have Google Knows. Have you seen this?
No.
You can use your iPhone now to smell things like a Shazam. Oh, I like that smell. Oh, what smell is that? Oh, you could buy it right here.
What?
Oh yeah, it's real. Look up Google knows. It's a thing. I thought it was a joke. I thought this must be an April Fool's joke. It must be a joke. I think. I hope it. I hope it's a joke. To be honest, it's like if this is a joke, like what the hell? But then also, I just learned this morning that they've been able to track your dreams and even convert it using a computer to a language that you can interpolate.
Oh, that's not looking good for me. I'm having those high testosterone dreams.
Well, you are pretty young. It gets better with time, my friend. Don't worry. Don't worry. You know, today I'll be 55 in a couple weeks. So you know, life is it does change and it doesn't control you anymore, which is good. It's not like when you get called in junior high up to the chalkboard, like at just the wrong moment. At just the wrong moment. But no, so I show you this, but here now I'm going to show you this. Now, look at that. This is what I traced out, all of it. See the horse's head, right? Thoth is right over the wing of the horse. It's a flying horse.
Flying horse, a Pegasus.
A Pegasus, yes. Which, by the way, I didn't know this, so I showed this to an astrologist who said, oh, that's Delphinus. That's what she does. She shoots the Sagitta on the back of the flying horse. And she shoots it at the eagle, the Aquila. And those are the exact decan constellations within Aquarius and Capricorn. In that exact order. And that's what's on the walls. So, I mean, come on, man. I was like, are you kidding me? And he says, no, I'm not kidding you. This is what it looks like.
Yep. There it is.
So
Pegasus.
This would be, if the bull is on the wall, right? This would be the north wall of the Great Pyramid. And Orion would be right here, which exactly is where he is. And then you would have Aries and Pisces and Aquarius on the east wall. The fixed signs of Taurus, Aquarius, Scorpio, and Leo are the center of the walls. All four walls. And so you've got Pegasus and Aquarius. And right next to the right next to the Aquila's wing is Piscis austrinus, a big fish. And we found it on the wall in the exact place it was supposed to be. And then Delphinus is the woman who's riding the horse. Aquila is the eagle, and Sagitta is the arrow. What a trip.
There was an alien face, I remember, on one of the walls.
There is? Yes, there is.
Which one of these deacons would you associate that with?
It was related to Leo, right? And somehow related to this Hydra, Crater, Corvus, Coma Berenices, Centaurus. So we're not exactly sure which one the alien head is related to. But we know that there is the Corvus, which is the raven. We know the Coma Berenices is the woman with the long hair, and there is one there on the wall. And we know that there's also a king on the wall, right? Which represents Cestius. And we also know that there's on the wall with above the serpents and Ophiuchus is the Corona Borealis. So we found that it's the shape of a beehive. And so all of these are on the walls, and we found about 40 of the 48 in total. Now, it's not easy to totally see them. I see them pretty well, but they're all overlapping each other. So it's pretty intense to try to look at all of it. Now, you asked about the timing, and what does this all have to do with like the timing of precession of equinox and everything, right? Well, the precession of equinox relates back to this. So this is the king's chamber. So Taurus is the north wall. This is the west wall. This is the east wall. And this is the south wall. When we look at the Last Supper painting, it is actually a depiction of this room. We're looking at it from the entry point, which is this little entrance over here on the right side. And we're looking at Orion, represented on the floor. The original location of the sarcophagus was at the center of the room. I found the chip marks where they moved it from.
They moved it.
They moved it. It's famously been moved.
Who moved
People
it?
knew this. They just know that it was moved, and they tried to take it out at one point. And then when they put it back here, and rather than putting back in the original position. The original position, you can find the chip marks on the floor. I found the chip marks on the floor, and I would have never found it if not for Maya, because I have the LiDAR scans of everything, and I could spend so much time now in the Great Pyramid because I could do it from my house, right? And so this is a 24,000-year cycle showing that time goes both forward and backwards. It's always been that way. We go forward in the procession of equinox on an annual basis. We go backwards on the precession. So you've got this cycle of 24,000 years going around this. It's 12,960 for half of the cycle and 11,040 for the other half of the cycle. Because as we get closer to Sirius A, we speed up. We have mass time dilation. So what this also says is that why is the room shaped the way it's shaped? Well, because the Orion constellation is shaped that way. It's a 2-to-1 rectangle also. But in addition to that, it's not just the Orion constellation that's shaped that way. And basically, this is just a circle inscribed within the rectangle of the King's Chamber versus a circle exoscribed around the rectangle of the King's Chamber. That's the position of these two dots right here. These line up exactly with the position of the rectangle of the King's Chamber. The sarcophagus is right here. It marks the position of the 3 belt stars.
The Orion's belt, yeah.
Yep. So when we look at the Last Supper painting, we're literally looking at the Last Supper painting from the view of Aquarius. This is the table. Right? I mean, and each of the apostles represent the 12 constellations. And then there are 36 holes in the ceiling, which represent the deacon. 3 for every zodiac. And then there's a missing one right next to Jesus. The missing one, 14th. Jesus being the 13th. Means that Ophiuchus and Orion become constellations now. They're part of the constellations. They're exactly right on the ecliptic. One is 1 degree above it, the other is 1 degree below it.
And with the Orion constellation, that includes Betelgeuse, am I right?
Yes.
And that's changing.
Orion constellation includes Betelgeuse, and it's going to explode, they believe. And that's going to be coming quite soon. So, all of this relates back to, as well, the shape of, we have 4 North Stars in that cycle of 24,000 years. We are currently with Polaris as our North Star. That's how we used to navigate the seas, right? And anciently as well. But 6,000 years ago, it wasn't Polaris, it was Thuban because of the Earth's wobble. And 6,000 years before that, it was Vega in the Lyra constellation, Thubans and Dracos. And 6,000 years before that, it was Deneb in Cygnus. All 4 of those constellations are on the north wall of the King's Chamber, where you'd expect them to be. And they take the exact shape of a 2-to-1 rectangle. As we look at them in the night sky, it makes a 2-to-1 rectangle, which is the identical shape of the King's Chamber. So the 4 corners represent maybe a shift in our North Star. We think that it's gradual, but we can't track it because we don't live that long. We don't know. We've only been tracking the precession of equinox for maybe 100 years, maybe a little bit more. How do we know that it's not a dramatic shift?
And that's happening this lifetime, do you think?
I believe so.
And we have, if Earth has a different North Star, what are the implications of that?
If this is correct, This would imply that the date of that shift would happen in 2029.
That date's been talked about quite a lot.
And that particular date is also coinciding with another very important date of an asteroid that's going to come close to Earth. On April 13th, Friday the 13th, 2029, we will become incredibly close to a asteroid colliding with Earth. It's well known. Guess what the chances are that it's going to hit Earth are? You're going to laugh.
I don't know.
Let's look it up. See what NASA has to say. Okay, what are the chances of Apophis? And by the way, Apophis is the name of the asteroid, which means death. Okay, so it's funny because it says now, here it is. Again, we live in a matrix, so keep that in mind. There is almost zero chance that the infamous city killer asteroid Apophis will hit Earth when it zips closely past our planet in 2029. Okay.
The god of chaos, they call it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Now, let's see what this says. So the Planetary Society says that there's a 2.7% chance of hitting Earth in 2029. Now, let's find out what that comes out to, like an integer ratio. You'll laugh.
We're going to have to square root that.
Okay. Okay, 2.7% chance. So 2.7. So that's the same as a 1 in 37 chance.
I'll take my chances.
So 1 in 37. So 37 reciprocal is 2.7. Isn't that funny? It's like 1 in 37 chance. It's also another way of looking at 137. And then there was a video that came out. Do you ever watch Veritasium?
No. You're opening a whole new world for me, Robert, with this podcast.
So Veritasium is excellent. It's a really epic science show, right? That this guy does, and he's got like 10 million viewers. It's very good. He puts a lot of work into it. So he did during the week of the eclipse, he did a special video. And he's very like academic. Why is the number 37 everywhere? Oh, you can't see it. Bummer.
Okay. 3.7 views that video had.
Why? Why is that not letting me do that? Are you kidding me? This is too weird. Okay, let me stop. I don't know why it's not letting me show you this. Okay, maybe I'll just do the full screen. I'll try this again. Yeah, because it's directly related to what I'm talking about. It's pretty funny. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Even the title of this, 137, why this number? So the number 37. Okay, play this. I'll expand it. Could you see that?
No, but we can put it in when we edit. We can put it in the video.
Yeah, we'll put it in with the edit. So basically what he's saying is this. What he's saying is that in the video, that if you ask people on the street, give me a random number between 1 and 100, most people answer 37. And so he dives into why people answer 37. What's the point of that? And people perceive it as being like a very randomized number because it's got, it's a prime number. It ends in 7 also, And so, but he finds all kinds of bizarre linkages to this number because 37 times 3.7 equals 137, right? So it's what we call fractal rooting. And 27 is associated with light, and 137 is associated with the Higgs boson. So therefore, it is that zone of light and darkness, 100%. When Wolfgang Pauli, the famous physicist, died, he said that he knew he was going to die the week before he died because they checked him into hospice and the room number he was given was 137. Like literally, if you start doing the research on this number, you'll find that it's the most mysterious number in all of physics. Most mysterious, I'll just see if it shows up as the most mysterious number in all of physics is 137. Here you go. So we are in a matrix that is constantly, recursively looking at itself, perceiving itself. Look at this. The intersection of quantum theory and relativity explored by quantum physics pioneer Wolfgang Pauli, who died in the room 137. With the help of Carl Jung, also highlighted the significance of 137. This number's allure was so profound that in 1936, Nature published an article titled The Mysterious Number 137. And that is 37 times 3.7. And 37 shows up all over the place. The reason I mention this to you is, of course, the eclipse happened at 137, the crossover point. 137 is a math constant called alpha, which means bull. Osiris is the Apis bull. 137. Hathor is the Omega. And I'll leave you with this one last thing, just enough to kind of like blow your mind since you asked me about. No one's ever asked me what synchronicities I've experienced. You're going to laugh on this. All right, so there's a math constant I just told you is 137. 1 over 137 is the actual value of Higgs boson relationship. So the way we derive that is you just take, it's actually 137.035999. Take the reciprocal of that, equals 0.0072975. There are 3 pairs of numbers in all of mathematics that have one unique double mirror characteristic. The 3 numbers that do this are the number 24, that means its palindrome of 42 is approximately its reciprocal value, because the reciprocal of 24 equals 41,66666. Forget the decimals for a moment. Okay? So when its reciprocal equals its palindrome, it has a special property. The other number that does this is like 73. 73, 137. Right? And then there's another number that does it. 57.1, 175. How do these 3 numbers relate to each other? Well, we could take 137 and divide it by 57.1. 2 of the numbers, right? To see what the relationship is. 2.4. 24 is one of those 3 numbers. Yeah. All 3 numbers, pairs that are these super numbers, connect to each other through their reciprocal palindrome relationships. No other numbers do this. Kind of a trip, right? So 3 numbers do this. Now, it happens that one of the numbers is related to 137, and 1 over 137, that equals alpha. The 24th number or 24th letter of our alphabet is X. So 24 could be ascribed to Chi. And we think that, but didn't we just choose, arbitrarily the letters for the English alphabet and all that stuff? No, we did not. And because consciousness built all of this. Even our measurement systems are not just arbitrary. So stop thinking we have to unlearn what we've learned in order to play this game well. Then omega is a math constant. The omega constant comes out to 56 degrees, 71 minutes. So 56 degrees, 71 minutes is equal to 0.5714. So 571, 285. So I'm not going to now take that, and that, by the way, is the omega constant. It's the thing that controls the Euler number in its wave expansion. So omega times Euler to the power of omega equals 1. Right? So this is it's a very important math relationship. So if we take these alpha chi omega, is alpha chi omega perhaps a math equation? And if it is, what does it equal? So let's take these numbers. Alpha, 0.73, multiplied by 2.4, multiplied by 0.571.
1.
Alpha chi omega equals 1 to 3 10,000ths, 3.9 10,000ths accuracy? Really?
What about alpha omega without the chi?
So that would be 0.73. Or you could take 137, right? But 7.3 multiplied by 0.571 equals 1 over 24. So alpha omega without the chi is 1 over 24.
And you said that the alpha chi omega was a language.
These are the names. These are the physics and math names of these constants, by the way. The math constant, the dimensionless constant of alpha is the 1 over 137 number, and omega is the 0.57. It is. That is the actual mathematical constant. You'll find it in Wikipedia and everything. So is it a coincidence that alpha and omega multiply together to 1 over 24? Is it a coincidence that when you include the 1 over 24, it comes back to 1?
That was left to us by future humans, or what you call Arcturians. What were they trying to tell us with that? Or why was that their signature?
Alpha chi omega stuff is everywhere. You know, here's a picture of it. I found it at one of the oldest sites in all of Egypt. And it's a place called the Osirian. And I didn't find it, actually. It was the whole group that was with us that found it. Okay.
Yeah, because in our trip, we saw the alpha omega everywhere as well.
Yep. And here it is. This is at the Osirian in Abydos, where the flower of life stuff is everywhere. You see this omega right here?
Yep.
This is the main, most prominent place. You've got a cross right here with a rose in the center of it. And then an alpha right here, alpha chi omega. And there's even an A. You can see the outline of the A. So the O is what's called embossed, and the A is debossed. So there's an indent for the A inside the omega, and there's it's sticking up for the omega. And the fact that I found it in Floripa also is just mind-blowing. So all of this stuff, even the face of Orion, right, showing up on the walls, I think it's telling us something in our day. So you asked me, you started all this with the question of, what did Dolores Cannon mean by use this in our day? I think this is what this means. That we're starting to realize that the Great Pyramid is a spiritual ascension stargate, and that we can actually use it to go places.
You've been places.
I have. I most definitely have. So, look at this. Now, here's a picture of Orion. This is in the exact spot right where the bull and cow are. Here's the bull. Here's the cow. And above it, you look, there's a pupil here and a pupil here. And an eyebrow. A forehead. Another eyebrow. He's kind of looking towards the north. Here's the bridge of his nose, and here's his nostrils. Here's the lips. This is the face of Orion on the wall. This was missed for thousands of years. This is not graffiti. This is drawn in perspective, which is a very advanced art form. It's got a three-dimensionality to it that we didn't understand during the Dark Ages until the Renaissance. I think the story is about us going through the precession of equinox, going through our different north stars that's shaped like the King's Chamber. It's telling us about the shift in our experience through time. And that Orion is going through this cycle, and we represent Orion. Metatron is the higher self. We are all the dimensionally limited avatars. And it's up to us to find ourselves and remember who we are, traveling through the hero's journey. It's all about the hero's journey and the cycling of time. That time loops on itself. It's a Mobius strip. And we should use the zodiac as our reckoning of where we are in the clock, because it goes both directions. As we move forward in time, we also simultaneously move backwards in time. We're always in now. This is why we went from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And yet we're going from, this month we're now in Taurus. And next month we'll be in Gemini. So we're going the opposite direction. This understanding is something that I think we've just been missing, because it's missing, and it's related to the Eye of Horus. And this is what I posted on my Instagram a few weeks before I left to go to Egypt, and then, not Egypt, before I went to go to Brazil. And then I look up in the sky right after the eclipse, there's a freaking Eye of Horus.
The universe winking at you.
Yeah, just like, here's the Mona Lisa. I was doing Codex season 2, and in the middle of it, I'm like looking at the Mona Lisa, just talking extemporaneously, and I noticed that there's a road in the background that's the shape of a snake, and then there's a river on the other side that's also the shape of a snake. And I already knew that Vitruvian Man, when you put him at the edges of the Mona Lisa painting with his fingertips going to the end, it puts his hand and wrist right inside of a shackle that's on the Mona Lisa painting. It fits like a lock and a key right here. And I could show you a better depiction of it. But this is, again, we think that we are separate entirely from the feminine as masculine, and feminine is totally separate from us. We are not. We most definitely are not. So this is metaphorically exactly what this is a reference to, this Eye of Horus. Let's see, here it is. Okay, so if I go back up here and I look at the Mona Lisa, you'll notice in the Mona Lisa painting, what is this thing right here? And then she got something the same color, it's kind of this black gray color behind her neck. Looks like a hook. The term hooker was from Italy in that period. So this is supposed to be an archetype of feminine. And it looks like it's this letter C or omega shape is on some chain. So then I was like, well, wait, let's look at Vitruvian Man and let's see if we can find anything on his page. You'll notice that Vitruvian Man is cut into 14 parts because he represents Osiris. The cuts of Osiris is the exact same spots of where Vitruvian Man was cut. So look, it's at the wrist, it's at the elbow, it's at the shoulder, it's at the heart, right, the chest. And if we look really closely, this is exactly where the king's chamber is supposed to be. And this weird indentation in his chest is taking the shape of a king's chamber. You see it?
Yep.
Oh, but wait, there are 3 diamonds. I don't know anyone that has, I know people with like 6 packs, but I've never seen 3 diamonds on their stomachs. The 3 diamonds are exactly Orion's belt.
Orion's belt.
And the 3 pyramids, many believe, are inverted beneath.
Which used to be 5,
surface.
maybe?
Which maybe used to be 5. And then, is this the Sphinx or something right here? It's hard to know. But yeah, that's Orion's belt. And then you've got the shape of a yod right here. Yod, He, Vav, He. It's the abbreviation for the Tetractys, the name of God. I don't know anyone that's got a line up here in their chest.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check mine afterwards just to make sure.
No matter how cut they are, right? No matter how cut they are. But notice something's different on the right wrist than on the left. On the left wrist, it looks like there might be a letter A in here somewhere, the faint outline of a letter A.
I see it.
I can kind of see that, right? And it's kind of large. It starts down here, goes up to here, it comes down to here, right? There's a letter A there, which would then make sense that Mona Lisa would have an omega somewhere hanging out. But notice on the right wrist has a cuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 lines here, this line and this line. And then 3 lines going this way for like his tendons and stuff, but there's only 1 line here. See this?
Yeah.
And then he's got something that looks like it's hanging down like a broken cuff. Like he escaped. So then I had the idea, well, what if I placed Vitruvian Man onto Mona Lisa and I matched the location of his fingers going to the tips of Mona Lisa's painting. And then if I matched the feet that would be resting where her hands are resting, but in perspective geometry, then the circle of Vitruvian Man perfectly crowns Mona Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
And look where the shackle ends up. Right over the wrist of Vitruvian Man.
Yeah.
So now I had alpha on one side over here, and now it's omega on the other. It's like he belongs there. And look, the eye of Horus is right above his crown.
What?
We're looking at the most famous paintings and drawings in the world. And they're meant to be together. But then I noticed, oh, look, this is shaped like a snake. And this river is shaped like a snake. Wait, is this the staff of Mercury?
Of Hermes, yeah.
Staff of Hermes?
Thoth.
And yes, it is. It absolutely is. And then we look at this. The shape of the omega on the drawing, on the Mona Lisa, is the same as the King's Chamber sarcophagus omega.
So do you think Da Vinci put that there in the King's Chamber?
No, I think it was already there. And he was leaving it as an encryption for us to find. Why are things hidden? So that they can be found.
For this age in particular.
Exactly. I mean, he's got so many encryptions all over the place. Look at this. All you have to do is flip the Salvator Mundi upside down and you see immediately that it's the freaking pyramid with the exact slope angle. This is the Eris edge. When you look at the pyramid from a corner, it's 10 degrees less angle. That's 41.843 degrees. The one from here, if you take the embroidery from here and up to the top, it equals 51.85 degrees, 0.84. That's exactly the pyramid. And then the embroidery in the center, right over his heart, is the same shape as the King's Chamber. See this?
Yep.
It is. And then these 3 stars right here, even this in his hand, this reflection of his hand, that's the pyramid. You can even see the lines for the pyramid.
What?
And then the 3 stars up here are Orion's top 3 stars: Mesa, Bellatrix, and Betelgeuse. It's a perfect match.
Wow. Robert, do you remember, the final night we were taken to this off-road sort of site to have dinner facing the backside of the pyramid.
Yep.
And not a lot of people get to see that view of behind the pyramid. What was the significance of that moment of us seeing the pyramid in a different perspective?
Because the entire theme of the week was to free your voice. And we were there using the musical notes that we had discovered, activating those pyramids, as well as the Abu Rawash pyramid, the first, right, which is the crown chakra. I did a video segment that came out today on my Instagram that you can learn about that. I actually think that Abu Rawash was the Tower of Babel, what we consider the Tower of Babel. And I found a map that the Frau Mauro map from, 1457, and that map shows that the actual Giza area was not, in fact, what we thought it to be. Even the name of the Nile River was the Gihon River, and it's completely different than what we had presupposed, right? So, and even within that, I found the name Babylon right next to it. So, which is kind of astounding, because it that should have been Cairo. So the center of Cairo and the Nile River is actually the Gihon River. And that's what was actually listed in the Bible where Babylon was supposed to be. And the scholar Josephus believed the same. So you could see this picture. Here's the Gihon River. This is Egypto. Here's the pyramids.
Which there are 5 right there.
That's right. And this place, where right next to this, right here, actually says Babylonia. Mm-hmm. Right here, Babylonia. In exactly the place it's supposed to be, right next to the Gihon River. So our whole history, I think, is about to go through a massive shift. And our understanding of it. So why did I take everybody to the backside of the pyramids? Because we had crossed it over. It was kind of a momentous occasion for all of us to be there together. We crossed into a new existence. So I wanted, the first night we had a party, we were in front of the pyramids. Before we went to the Great Pyramid, before we did all the things that we did together. And I wanted to be symbolic of we've crossed over to a new world, a new existence, a new perception. If you want to change your world, don't focus on changing the world around you. Start focusing on learning how to fall in love with it just as it is. And then the world will become the paradise that you perceive. We attract everything that we judge until we no longer judge what we attract. The things we don't like about the world are all the things that show up in the world around us until we stop judging those things. It will inundate our experience. So if I told you that you don't like deforestation, and so you've picked up your pitchfork to fight deforestation, that the only net result of fighting the deforestation is to create more deforestation. You might feel a little differently about it. That's why the 24 precepts become really important, because it flips how we perceive the world into some new paradigm. The things we don't like about the world around us are actually the things we don't like about ourselves. So once we start to learn to love ourselves truly, then we can fall in love with the world around us. Once we stop judging ourselves negatively, then we can stop judging ourselves and the world around us. And then your existence shifts. And that is the shift. The shift is that some people will choose love over being right. And others will choose to go deeper into the battle between this never-ending battle between light and darkness. When actually it's not a battle at all. They're just opposite conditions of each other. Darkness is not the absence of light. It's the opposite condition of light. It's the absorption of light. We cannot have, and everyone says, oh, but I walk in a dark room and it's dark. Well, that's only dark to your eyes. The room, if I did a spectral analysis on the room, it would look like all the different colors of the spectrum. The only thing that's happening when I turn on the light is I'm magnifying the amplitude of the reflection of that light or the absorption thereof. Darkness is not the absence of light. Darkness is the absorption of light. And therefore, you cannot have light and all the things that we ascribe to the beauty of light without also having the darkness. This is a basic fundamental principle of physics. The dark needs the light as much as the light needs the dark. And it's all an illusion because we have a self-bias as a hero. But even villains in society believe themselves heroes. And what is a villain? A villain is someone who believes that they have no darkness whatsoever because they're in full denial of it, and therefore they do the most heinous acts. A disintegrated shadow or a fully denied shadow is the most dangerous. I'm not afraid of people that have darkness because everyone does. Everyone has an equal amount of light and darkness. It's impossible for it to be any other way. No one's any better than anyone else, not any one of us. I'm only concerned about people that believe they have no darkness. But even that is just a reflection of some aspect of me, that I should ask myself the question, why did I choose this if I don't like it? Why did I want to learn this thing? What was the principle? And we learn here through opposites. If I'm here to learn about unconditional love, I must experience the relativity, because everything is relativistic. I must experience the relativity of the opposite of unconditional love or conditional love or betrayal. And I will experience that until I no longer judge negatively being betrayed. So if I say to myself, oh, that friend betrayed me again. I just got betrayed again. I always get betrayed. The only thing that's going to do is bring me more betrayal.
Reinforces the story that you're playing out in your head.
Exactly. Until you finally stop yourself and say, wait, what am I trying to learn here? Why did I choose this? I'm not a victim. Victimhood only begets more victimhood. Why did I choose this? So if I ask myself why I chose it, and I'm honest with myself, then maybe I start to realize what was it I wanted to learn from this. And if the thing I wanted to learn from it was unconditional love, usually the opposite of the experience I've been having, then the only way I can truly learn unconditionality of love is to no longer judge its opposite condition of it. So to experience the light, we have to stop judging negatively the darkness.
Yeah. Can't judge the game. Gotta fall in love with it. And even in your recent interview with Daryl Anka, he said that when you're in love with everyone, you'll become telepathic. So that's, again, the new senses that are arising for humanity.
Yeah, and that's happening. So learn to fall in love with everything as it is without judgment. And the moments that you have difficulties, realize that those sufferings are actually the best opportunity to turn into gold, just as the alchemy was described through this incredible Sonnet 114, which I could not have anticipated you bringing it up, but there you go. For the people that watch this podcast, I hope they realize that they too can experience this level of connectivity with Source every day. It's a function of our own judgment of ourselves and others around us. What's on the outside of you is just a reflection of what's on the inside of you. The things we don't like about ourselves, we try to push out of ourselves, and then it just pops up in the world around us. Until we no longer judge the thing that is the opposite of what we came here to learn. So it's really important to study the patterns of your life and to see which experiences you're having over and over and over again. And my ears are ringing right now, big time.
Yeah. I've been having chills throughout this whole conversation. The last question that I had for you for today, you sort of just preluded to the question without even knowing what I was going to ask you. But the question was, what's one life experience that reminded you that you are the miracle?
You know, I would say the biggest shift for me happened the night that I discovered the Alpha Omega. I knew I was going to discover something. I told several of my friends, I'm going to Egypt and I'm going to discover something. And everyone probably thought I was nuts. And I even called Nassim Haramein and said, I'm going to discover something. I think it's related to Alpha Omega. And then I discovered in Jerusalem, Alpha Omega on the floor under the Dome of the Rock in the caves, which is where the Ark of the Covenant was hidden for a long time. And then the next night, I went to Egypt and discovered the Alpha Omega on the rim. And I knew that that was going to shift my life forever. 2 weeks later, I discovered the prime number pattern and published it. And I felt like, you know, I've always believed that there are two types of people, right? People that believe in miracles and those that don't. But maybe I needed to include a third type of person, which is people that believe in miracles and people that don't believe in miracles, and then those people that realize that they themselves are the miracle, that life itself is the miracle. And I think that was the moment that I started realizing that it wasn't just that I had experienced a miracle, because I'd experienced miracles before. It felt like a miracle. But that's the moment I started realizing that maybe life itself was the miracle. And that I was starting to come into contact with what my soul's journey is, why I'm here, what I had committed to do and to learn. And it was a profound moment because it changed and shifted everything. And every day that I now experience just on this, you know, this has probably been, you know, a ton of synchronicities that we've had just on this one podcast. And I haven't even told you all of them. As I glanced at the clock or as I glanced at something else or, you know, noticed another point or something that you said. When we start to walk with our true authenticity, that's when we start walking with the divine. And that's what it feels like we're starting to do. And all I could do is embrace it more and more, be more and more authentic, and fall in love with everything in the world around me. We're meant to be here as a fun playground. But everything we experienced that was negative and difficult happened for a reason. It didn't happen by accident. And when you think about how all of it is so intricately put together and so beautifully done, from moments of grandeur to thoughts of despair and all the way back, the only thing that you can connect all of it with is the love that underlies it all. This is a love story. The hero's journey is the ultimate love story. And as we learn to fall in love with ourselves, we fall in love with the world. And then that world becomes the reflection of what we had perceived it to be. The shift in our own belief systems. The cage is no longer a cage, but becomes and turns into the paradise because we start thinking in the way that is always intended for us to be as omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent creators. We are unlimited. And that's going to be part and parcel of the age that we're entering into now. And there doesn't have to be a leader in this age. That's what I loved about Egypt the most. You know, I was like, okay, got a lot of people here who are really experts on Egypt and Matthias and everything. And you know, Billy Carson's there too. There are all kinds of people that were there. And I was thinking to myself, you know, well, I wonder, if people are going to be like, no, let's not do it this way, let's do it that way. And I wanted so significantly for it to be an environment that would be indicative of a new era where there doesn't have to be the leader, but that everyone would play the role of a leader. And no one had to be the leader. And that was, the entire experience was so symbiotic, so beautiful, so perfect, like an orchestra that was playing impromptu music without knowing what the music and next line was going to be. But it still came out like the most incredible opus, a symphony. And I didn't have to be the leader, which was something that I really appreciated. And everyone led. So I think that's what this new age is going to be about. It's a whole new paradigm in everything. The age of overlords and subjugation and domination and all that stuff is over.
Robert, this has been one of the wildest, most mind-blowing podcasts that we've recorded to date. And just the interconnected nature of what you've said, what I've said, the weaving. I even asked Matthias last week to leave you a question for this podcast, but it might be a long response. He said,
no, go ahead. Go ahead. I have to know now. You can't just throw that out there.
I said, Matthias, I'm having Robert come on next week. Leave him a question. And he goes, all right, ask him what's 2 + 2.
Well, I mean, actually, it's funny because fact becomes facet. And even in mathematics, there are different ways to look at things dimensionally, right? It's like, 0 times 0 equals 0. But 0 to the power of 0 equals 1. And we tend to think of power as an exponentiation similarly to multiplication. So there may be, and this is one of the things I did when I went through my crisis in 2016, I wanted to question everything. I had to question all of my objective reality. And is there even an objective reality? And so as I went through that, I went back, does 1 + 1 equal 2? Does, 1 times 1 equal 2? Terrence Howard believes it's, 1 times 1 equals 2. And maybe in some way, in some dimension, right? But, 1 times 4 is still 4. There are certain things that I think will always look a certain way, right? We look at the perfect number as 6. Why is it the perfect number? Well, because 2 plus 3 plus 1 equals 6. And 2 times 3 times 1 equals 6. There's this balance between the two. And it crosses over right there. So you start to look at, other numbers larger than that, and it no longer shows that kind of relationship, So 4 times 3 times 2 equals 24. 4 plus 3 plus 2 equals, right, 10. When we add 1 to it, so it's 4 plus, so if you did 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 equals 10, 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 equals 24. So there's inherent 24ness in that relationship. And that's also that special triangle because the base is 10 and the height's 24. So it's really just related to the addition of the detractus and the multiplication of the detractus. That's what makes that triangle. That's why that particular pyramid at Abu Rawash is 86.4 feet wide. Its half base is 43.21 feet. And 86.4 relates to the 86,400 seconds we have in one day. So we think that mathematics is the most objective of the sciences, the queen of the sciences. But actually, it's also the most esoteric. We ascribe meaning to numbers like society-wide. My lucky number is 7. Mine is 8. There's some resonance with numbers. The universal language is math. So how we look at one thing one way, we should never be closed off to seeing it a different way. Whenever someone comes into my life, I think to myself, why did this person come into my life? What am I intended to learn from this person? Because I can learn something from everybody that comes into my life. And everybody that comes into my life and every experience that I have and everything I encounter could be a miracle. It's up to me. So I think the answer to 2 + 2 is 4. But 2 times 2 is also 4. That's a unique thing, right? 3 times 3 equals 9, but 3 + 3 is 6. See how it breaks off? So he probably gave the one example that has a very, very unique property, similar to the one I just said.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very, very unique situation. The 2 + 2 equals 4. 2 times 2 equals 4. 2 squared is 4. And math is not as objective as we think. Just like language is not as objective as we think. The way we interpret language and words, and math is a language, no different. Yes, there are grammatic rules and everything in language, and there are in math too. But we should never be closed to the double entendre. Language has a double entendre. And so does math.
Yeah. I think to wrap all of that, it's, we've taken so many things at face value that we've learned since we were kids. And, someone that can even glimpse into your mind, someone that, you are someone that has done that work to question everything. And the more you learn, the less you know, which is also in your precepts.
Very true.
So that is it. We take 2 + 2 at face value, but if we dig a little deeper, that we might find the miracle. And in the course of miracles, the miracle is just a shift in perception. So we're all shifting perception. And thank you, Robert, for helping us shift our perception a little bit more toward the new era, to the new earth. And I appreciate you wholeheartedly, brother. You are one of the most incredible human beings I've met. And I appreciate this friendship so much.
Thank you. And likewise to you. And I hope you had a wonderful time in Egypt with us.
I did.
And that it expanded you. And we will be going back again. And we're going to go in December. And Matthias and I are going to go to Egypt first. We're doing a special project there that is like double top secret. But then we're going to have the whole crew invited too. So I'm trying to get the dates. It's going to be likely the same week of last year, but we're going to go down the Nile.
Wow. Can't wait. Looking forward to it, brother.
And for everybody that's listening, check out Orion.
Yes.
The world is shifting so fast, and we built this for this community so the community could be safe while everything kind of goes through this transition of how we perceive the world shifting. Because just because we change our perception doesn't mean that everything is going to switch overnight to all, moonbeams and rainbows and unicorns. So we can start to try to imagine that way. And the best thing to do is just like Buckminster Fuller said, you can't beat or change the course of history or change the course of things by fighting that which is already in place, the incumbencies. The way you change it is by perceiving it differently and creating a new paradigm that makes the fighting of the old paradigm irrelevant, which is, I think, where we are. And I think that's what Orion was built to do. And I'm really excited about it. It's grown like crazy. We have, just on my group chat now, I have 5,000 people. And it's cool to see it. And we've been limiting it. We have another 20,000 in our wait list right now. So we've been limiting it because we've been doing testing on all the scaling stuff, because we want this to be able to scale very, very quickly to millions of people.
Yeah.
And it's been performing very well. And we've been hitting all those milestones, but we've been purposely kind of holding it back But very soon we're gonna, take off the governor.
Yeah. So for someone who wants to get on Orion, where would you send them?
Just you go on my Instagram link on my link tree on Instagram, and just one of the first things you see on there is Orion Messenger. Mm-hmm. You can also go to orionmessenger.io and just join the wait list, and then we'll send you an email to allow you entry into it. The community there is awesome. People love it. And it's very active too.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time keeping up with it already. But it's fun to watch too. It also protects all of your data. We don't own any of your data. There's no advertising on it. There's no data scraping. There's no bots. There's no algorithms. So it's like social media used to be, and it's fully super encrypted, and it's on blockchain, so it's decentralized, and it's a PWA, so it can't be shut off any platforms. It's definitely a new paradigm. So come check it out.
It's a beautiful solution, brother. And thank you so much for all the effort and just the love that you radiate.
Thank you, my friend.
Yeah. We will have to do this again next time. We will have to keep going.
We will.
The Synchronicity show.
When you hit me, when you got through one question, right? Which is like, tell me about your synchronicities. I'm like, okay, you asked.
Ask and you shall receive.
I've never done that before, but no, really, thank you for listening to the prompting that you had also on, the 423 thing, because that led me straight to the day of the year this is, which I would have never even looked at the 114th sonnet and gotten that incredible learning.
And today's also a full moon in Scorpio. This was the night that you were in the Great Pyramid and you discovered the dragons. So much happened on this day. So we could have kept going, but we will save that for a later time.
Yeah, no, it's intense. It's definitely, and last year, in 2022, it was middle of Ramadan. It was Passover. It was a Sunday morning, like Saturday night, Sunday morning, that I was there. And it was the day of, today's date also is the day of St. George the Dragon. And that was the day I discovered the dragons. Yes, it's true. The day of St. George the Dragon's defeat over the dragons. So day of St. George of the Dragons. April 23rd.
There it is.
See, another synchronicity you didn't even realize.
That's the Matrix.
That is the Matrix for you right there. Oh, why is it? It keeps cutting off and truncating the top of my screen.
No, but I can see it now. I just minimize the screen, but I can see everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, you can see it?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's April 23rd. That's today. So again, there are no coincidences.
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
So thank you, Emilio. Such a pleasure to be with you, and looking forward to this one coming out.
Yes, sir, brother. Sir, now you're getting knighted in 2 other countries. So you're going to be Sir Cubed the next time we see each other.
I think my title in the new one is going to be Commander.
Oh, Sergeant.
So like a Knight Commander now, I think is what it's called.
Might as well just change it to like Robert Buzz Lightyear Commander.
Knight Commander Portugal. I think that's what it is. The Order of Merit of the Portuguese Royal House. Interesting. The Military Order of the Tower and Sword. Yeah, it's Knight Commander. That's what it is. The Military Order of the Tower and Sword. Oh, Matthias is going to love this. Check out this medal. This is epic. The medal that I get for this is like it's like, wow.
Oh,
this thing.
That's some bling.
It's some bling.
Let's go.
That is some bling, man. What the heck? It's pretty epic. Wow. All right then.
Well, congratulations on all that, brother. And you're going to continue to impact the world in many, many ways that you probably don't even know.
Look, you could say all the crazy ass shit that I just said, and still get knighted in society.
And speak at the Vatican and, like all these things.
Oh yeah. I went to, I went to the United Nations and told everybody that they were overlords and the world didn't need overlords anymore. I'm living my best life.
Yes,
bro.
you
I am living my best life. I mean, shit. It's pretty funny, but it's true. It's like, you don't have to, I went to, it's so funny. Shervin is on my board of Orion, right? And he had his first board meeting yesterday, and we've got some pretty official guys on there, And so Shervin, he never wears like a collared shirt or anything, never. And he got on the board call yesterday, and he was wearing a collared shirt. He was all kind of nervous. It was cute. It was very cute. Love him to death. And I'm like, he's wearing a collared shirt. And yesterday was the first day that I didn't wear a collared shirt to a board meeting.
Switch roles.
Yeah, so I'm going into the stage of the I don't give a fuck. It's like no fucks given.
Blue calls it the bad bitch era.
Yeah, that's right. What is Blue Daddy? That's right, Blue Daddy. That's right. She's Blue Daddy. No, you're totally right. And it's kind of funny because that's kind of the zone I'm going into now. And now the more I just kind of be authentic and say exactly what I feel and think, it's like, it's hilarious. It's like they keep inviting me back to do more stuff. And I'm like, wow, okay. I thought it was an insult. And I got mobbed at the UN one. People were like, you're so right. Oh my gosh. It was really funny. Yeah.
That's another equation.
I think
authenticity
just be authentic
equals magnetism.
Yes. It's almost like that's an EMC equals MC squared type of thing.
I think Einstein probably, he knew it. He just didn't want to publish it. So
damn straight. No, it's pretty epic, but thanks so much. I am looking forward to going to the Vatican next month, and I'm going to spend a whole day in the Vatican Library.
Wow. Not the hidden one.
Yes.
Oh, the hidden one.
The hidden one. Yes.
Sheesh.
I got my library card.
You sweet talk the librarian.
Something, right? It's like, again, living my best life. What can I say?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we'll have to catch up on that very soon.
And please, everyone, vote for me for Entrepreneur of the Year award for the Conscious Awards. It's coming.
I'll see you there. I'll see you there.
Awesome. So, last year I won in the category of hilariously best TV host and an actor. I was like, best actor. That was hilarious. You were there for that, right? Yeah. How funny was that? I was like, and then they tried to pull me off the stage. Like after I talked for like 10 seconds, they start playing the music. I'm like, give me a minute, man.
I'm just getting started, bro. It was amazing. So we'll link everything, Orion, the Conscious Awards, voting, everything in the show notes where people can find you. And yeah, if you love this video, if you love this, share it, because that's how we're going to spread Robert's message around the world like a wildfire, which needs to be heard. Bro. So awesome. There we go.
Thank you so much. And keep up the great work. You're crushing it, man. I saw you just cross 50,000. That's not easy to get to. It's an important milestone.
Thank you.
And it's like, that's when, YouTube starts to become, it's like a serious gig when you cross that 50,000 threshold mark.
Really?
And it's so much harder to get 50,000 followers on YouTube than it is on Instagram or something.
Yeah.
How many do you have on Insta now?
Yeah, Insta, I don't focus too much on it. It's like at 14. But the YouTube community is beautiful, and the messages that we receive here, the support. We just had Hella on the show, and she channeled for an hour, and the response was beautiful. Like, people really loved her channeling.
What'd she channel?
She channeled the group of archangels, Arcturians. She actually started connecting with Sekhmet while we were in Egypt, and a lineage of Mary Magdalene. So a little bit of everything, she said. It was the whole crew showed up.
Wow, epic.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Beautiful.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, good talking with you. And I'll look forward to seeing you again really soon.
We will.
And keep up the great work. Just keep going.
Thank you, brother.
Keep trucking.
Thank you.
All right, man. See you later.